So I have a brother who lives in a small town on the Navajo REZ. It's not even a town. I would call it a small village because of how small the place is. I'm not gonna name it because the story is real, and I also believe my brother, and I know he wouldn't make any of this up. But I will be revealing the truth, and if any of you are involved in this type of stuff, I really hope it gets revealed and people find out. Anyways, my brother met this girl a few years back, and they decided to move in together. That's when he went and lived with her. When they broke up, they ended up separating, and my brother told me that she wasn't who she claimed to be. He just told me straight up that when he was at her place, the whole town that she lived in was involved in witchcraft. I was shocked. One, because I knew people who lived there, and never in my life and thoughts did I ever think that a lot of people that I knew, or that were friends of mine, would be getting involved in that type of garbage. And I was shocked when I found out. But anyways, he told me that in that little town, there's an evil medicine man who is the one behind all of this. He also happens to live in the same block that he was living in, and he was only 4 houses from them. He said that one morning, around 5 a.m., he was getting ready to go to work. He started driving, and he passed by the home of the medicine man. As he was driving by the house on his way to work, he saw the door to the garage completely open. The light was on inside, and he said that whenever he drove by, he could see everything inside. He saw a man standing inside. He said that the man was tall, big, and he was wearing all black. That's when he noticed his feet and legs, but they were not normal. His feet were those of a cow or a bull, like some sort of animal feet. He told me that when he got a better look at it, it looked like it was a half human and half beast. He panicked, terrified, and he floored the gas pedal on the car just to get out of there. He said that he got very scared with what he saw. So scared that that was the last time he ever drove by his house. There's a bunch of other things that he saw happen, but he said that some of these things he won't ever share with me because that's how serious they are. Anyways, I'm glad my brother left her, and we refuse to drive by that town from now on. So if you are one of them that's living in that town, we know. As far as everybody else goes, always be safe. You never know what somebody's intentions are. I am a hunter. I like to hunt wild boar specifically, even though I have gone deer hunting, and I have been known to get a turkey for Thanksgiving. I mostly hunt boar. If you didn't know, they're a big problem in the USA. One of them can have 2 litters a year, and it's common for each one to consist of 10 or more. Given that pigs eat anything and everything, it's not hard to see why the Department of Fish and Wildlife makes it legal to hunt them with almost no restrictions. I do want to say that in my state, it's illegal to hunt most large mammals with some night vision or thermal scopes, with the exception of boar and coyotes. I've been saving for a year, mostly just fun money. It's hard to explain to your wife that a scope that cost us about twice as much as the rifle that I was going to use was worth it. But I did it. I took it to a range and got it sighted. There was an area that was peppered with boar activity that I knew would be perfect for a night hunt. It was easily accessible with my truck, with some good spots that I could set up and overlook a big clearing. The night began uneventful, mostly just me messing with a new toy, cycling through the settings. I was a little impatient. I spotted a few deer, but they were out of season, and like I mentioned before, my current setup wasn't legal for deer. I moved to another spot that I had seen days earlier that wasn't much better than my first, but it gave me something to do, and also a new angle to look around with my new scope. After an hour or so of glassing the area, it dawned on me. This spot didn't have much animal activity at all. No rabbit or owls. And the deer that I had seen were hundreds of yards from where I was. Why was this pocket of land so dead at night, but so alive in the day? I set up around 10 p.m., and it was about 2 a.m. when I started to think about packing up, maybe setting up a target before I left, and just taking some practice shots. But then I heard some crunching come from the direction that I had came from before. I panned my scope over and saw the silhouette of a small bear pushing through the bushes. It's important to note that my scope isn't exactly quote-unquote night vision. It's a thermal scope, kind of like a black and white version of what you see in the Predator movies. I adjusted my range and zoomed in a bit. I remember the moment. I was startled when I saw that it wasn't really a bear. It was a man. He was so low and hunched over I thought I was looking at a young bear. Is that a game warden? It couldn't be. I would have seen the headlights coming up from the road. And where did he even walk from? I was 30 miles away from anything and on public lands. I was about to call out when I adjusted my sights and noticed he was naked. No shoes, pants, or anything. I remember being disturbed by his movements, like a squirrel or something, twitching and grabbing at the foliage, sniffing around and palming the tree. Was that my tree? Was that the tree I was at before? The one that I was leaning on before? That thought alone terrified me. Could he smell me? Then he did something that I still have nightmares about today. He squatted and placed his hands in the dirt between his feet and stared straight up like a dog mid-howl. And I heard it, a voice coming from that direction, a very compelling female voice. Help, I'm lost. Help. There was a long pause, but neither of us moved a muscle. The center of my sights was trained at the dirt in front of his feet. I couldn't bring myself to aim directly at another person. It went against everything that I had learned about firearms. Were they lost? Was this some guy that had gone crazy out here? Why did he sound like a woman? Help, please, I can't walk. The voice called out. That's when I called bullshit. Not only could he walk, when I first saw him, he was traversing the land with ease for a naked person. He was making it look so easy that I thought he was a bear. That's a fucking trap. This guy is trying to draw me to him. Lucky for me, the lack of activity before had caused me to pack up most of my gear. Maybe I left behind a hat and a sitting pad, but I didn't give a shit in that moment. I took my eyes off of him for a moment to get my pack on. I buckled my chest strap and I scrambled for my rifle. To my surprise, he was still in the same spot. However, his face was staring at me, and I swear I saw him smile. The thermal scope has an effect that makes animals' eyes appear white. How the fuck was he able to hear me get up and put my gear on? He must have been easily 150 yards away. Get the fuck out of here, I yelled out to him. That's when he stood upright, and it hit me how tall and skinny he actually was. Easily about 6 feet and very lean. He then started taking a few strides towards me, and my reaction was to send a round above his head into the tree line. He was freaky as hell, pretty scary, but technically, he hadn't really done anything. What would I tell the police? I didn't want to shoot someone. He then stopped dead in his tracks and hunched down on all fours. This next one's gonna fuck you up. Leave. He stayed on all fours, and this time, I had my sights trained on the center of him. His eyes were just above the grass like a large cat or something. I was trying to stop my trembling, and I knew that my voice had cracked a little on that last warning. I was terrified. That standoff lasted about a minute or two, maybe less, but it felt like forever. Right away, he bolted left towards the tree line opposite of the road. So much for not being able to walk. I could barely keep him in my scope when he was moving so fast. He disappeared into the brush, and that's when I sent another bullet flying high towards him. I racked another round, and I tried to pocket that mag and swap for a fresh one, but I dropped it, and I didn't bother looking for it. At this point, I know I wasn't far from my truck, and I wanted to get the fuck out of there. That's when I could hear him in the distance. He started yelling in this weird sound that could have been a laugh, or maybe a cry. I scrambled up the trail and got to my truck. I tossed my gear into the cab but kept the rifle in the passenger seat, and then I just sped off. For the longest time that I told this story from my perspective, of having spotted some crackhead living off the land like some kind of caveman. I did report it to the game warden, but all they did was scold me for hunting at night alone, and I never did receive an update. It wasn't until I told the story at a camping trip that my nephew told me about Wendigos, rakes, and skinwalkers. My story scared the piss out of him because the spot we were camping was technically the same forest that I had seen the bastard, just about 50 miles east of it. He was so scared that his mom had to take him home. She was really pissed. I have gone down the rabbit hole on these scary stories. I'm not saying that what I saw was a Wendigo or a skinwalker. I'm just wondering if these things do exist. I may have dodged quite the bullet that night. Or maybe it was just a tweaker being Donnie Thornberry in the middle of the night. Either way, I thought I would share this with you. This story is from one of my friends. I can't guarantee anything to its accuracy. I'm just going on what he told me to be true. I do believe he wouldn't lie about this. So he told me that him and a few buddies, they went out to the Highline Trail in Utah. They were planning to be there for a week. It wasn't long before weird things started to happen. It started out with stuff like hiking pools and backpacks ending up on the opposite sides of the camp. Everybody's boots are upside down in the morning. They would hang their food bags on trees at night, but then they would find them tied to other trees in the morning. Most of them just brushed this off as animals, or someone in their group getting a midnight snack. But then more weird things started happening. They lose the trail and need to backtrack, and they find these large cut branches, and a clever disguise laid over the actual trail. Some of them are starting to get paranoid now. They start thinking that they're being stalked or something. What really starts freaking people out though is waking up to finding their tents rearranged in their campsite. The stakes of non-freestanding tents look like they all been undisturbed, but the tents are all in different places around the camp. Nobody has an idea how their tents could have been all moved around, and in some cases, apparently broken down and repitched with none of them noticing or waking up. The next night they decide to keep watch in 3-hour shifts since everyone is on edge. The watchmen get some thick branches, tie knives to the end, and they arm themselves with bear mace. The first half of the night, nothing happens. Then it happens to be my friend's turn to stay and watch. He got his camera because he figures that the flash can illuminate wide areas if something does come close to them. It doesn't really matter though, because he ends up falling asleep just before dawn, and nothing happens that night. The next morning, however, somebody is asking him why he was taking pictures last night. My friend freezes slowly, takes out the camera, and checks the memory card. There's pictures of everyone sleeping, including himself. By following a creek a little ways upstream, they're able to find the trail, which somebody recognizes as being not too far from their campsite. They only have 12 miles to go before they get to the trailhead, but it is early afternoon, but they're doubtful that they can finish the trip the same day. Reaching the campsite, they find everything shredded to pieces. Apparently only one backpack was unharmed. Everything is everywhere. Lucky for them, somebody finds the car keys and they basically run the rest of the way back, getting lost several times but reaching the trailhead before dark. When they finally get to the trailhead, everyone is too exhausted to make camp or do anything, so all 6 of them just pile into the car, lock the doors, and fall asleep. A knock on their window wakes them up the next morning. It's the police, and the cop wants to know what they're doing. They try to explain the situation the best they can, and the policeman tells them that the entire entrance to the forest has been closed for a few days now because of some abnormal animal activity. My friend gets a little bit suspicious, and he asks the policeman why they're the ones handling this and not the forest rangers. When he does ask, the cop just goes quiet and looks away and ignores him. It's a very awkward moment, which is interrupted by another friend in the car. He notices now that it's morning and that there's about a dozen other cars in the parking lot, but they all have flat tires. Everybody gets out of the car, and they realize that their own tires are flat as well. At this point, the policeman comes clean, and he explains that there's actually a manhunt going on in the area, but they're not exactly sure what they're dealing with. In the last week, there's been lots of dead hikers to turn up. My friend remembers the strange photos and gets out his camera to show the cop. That's when his face suddenly goes blank, and he hands back the camera. It's a photo that was taken inside the car the night before. Partially visible in the last photo, which is a picture of my friend sleeping. However, it's not just a picture of him. You know those party photos where the person holding the camera is trying to be included in the picture as well? On the left side of the picture is my friend sleeping, and in the right side is a pure white face with black holes for eyes. My friend actually showed me this picture, and this is why I believe him. I'm from Chinle, and I hate driving through Del Muerto at night. It's beautiful during the day, but it's scary as hell at night. I had typed out this story already, but somehow my phone ended up dying, and I decided to wait to share it again. So this will be my second time trying to send it over to you. Maybe it's a sign. This happened to me and my friend back in winter of 1988. On this one night, we decided to drive down to Chinle from Saley, Arizona. We were looking to score some beer for the evening. We both were going to school at Navajo Community College, staying in the dorm. The night was cold and the road had some ice. Halfway down to Chinle, there was a known bootlegger, so we decided to see if they could sell to us. Bootleggers only sell to you if they know you. Obviously, it's illegal, and they don't want to get busted selling to an undercover. We got turned down, so we continued down towards Chinle. As we're going, that's when we see this person standing by the road. We assume he's a drunk hitchhiker, and maybe he knew of somebody who could get us some alcohol, so we stopped to give him a ride. He didn't run up to the truck. We backed up to where he was standing at. As I did, he's not there anymore. Did he run off to the side? We called out for him. Nothing. So we ended up leaving, and we assumed that maybe we scared them off, thinking that we were gonna jump him or something. So we turned around down the road and came back again to the spot where he was standing at. Again, he's not there. We drive off, and then a little ways the truck started to act up. It ended up dying completely, so we just parked there on the side of the road with no power, no lights, nothing. Being young and stupid, well, what the fuck do we do now? That's when my friend decides to start with the spooky shit. He then asked me if I took a good look at that guy. I just said that he looked like he didn't have a shirt on. But that's when my friend was like, he also looked to have white paint all over his body, and he also had some feathers around him on his outfit, or whatever he was wearing. Now my friend had a better look at him because the guy was standing on his side of the road. Plus, when I slowed down to give him a ride, he had a good view of him. That's when we both got quiet. because we both knew this wasn't normal. We were both terrified at this point, sitting there with no power to the truck. Somehow, a few minutes passed by and I picked up the courage, and I jumped out of the truck and climbed over a fence that was there on the side. I broke off a whole branch to a big cedar tree. I lit it on fire, and I started to smudge ourselves and the whole truck underneath, inside out, the whole time while saying some prayers. My friend just sat in the truck all scared. After a while, we just stayed there in the truck all smoke-filled, and the whole time not one vehicle drove by. We were all out there alone in the dark. Finally, the lights in the truck slowly started to come back one at a time. The dash lights, the headlights, the blinker lights, everything came back on. We started the truck, but it barely came back to life also. The truck had lost power. We couldn't make it back to school. But my friend had relatives living down at Chinley, and it was all downhill. So we decided to get the hell out of there, and we didn't want to run into that guy again. So we ended up coasting most of the way down, and we stayed at Chinley for the night. I was never able to fully fix my truck. Something strange happened to it. I mean, it would start up, but it just never ran the same again. A few months later, I ended up getting into a car accident, and the truck ended up total. When we had it towed back home, we parked it at my auntie's house. That same night, the dogs were barking out there. Maybe they were barking at the truck, or maybe something else was going on with it. Anyways, this all happened at Del Muerto, Arizona. Do I think it was a skinwalker? Maybe, maybe not. Was it an evil spirit? Possibly. All I know is that we ran into something on that crazy winter night, and I hope you all don't ever run into something like that. Before I go, I did run into my friend again a few years down the road. I asked him if he remembered that incident. To my surprise, he said no. I'm sure he just didn't want to talk about it. I tried reminding him, but it's almost like he just refused to talk about it. Maybe I shouldn't have brought this up. All of this is a true story. This happened about 2 months ago, and I live around 150 acres of land in the south, and you don't really have neighbors. You can imagine why. My girlfriend had just finished her senior year of high school, and we had been planning on spending the summer together. She was going to end up going to college, and she wouldn't have as much free time. I woke up and got a pot of coffee going, just like I normally do. I turned on the news and waited for the coffee to finish brewing. For some reason, I began to feel uneasy, or maybe a sense of that something was going to happen that day. Something was off, but I just didn't know what it was. I finished my cup of coffee, and then I hopped in my truck and began the trip to go and pick her up. I wasn't exactly excited about going to get her, as I do have a bad back, and driving for over 20 minutes causes a lot of discomfort. And you might be asking why she didn't just drive herself over to my place. You see, her car isn't reliable, and she was having a bad alternator issue. So I finally get to her place. She gets all her stuff and we head back to my house. As I drive down the long gravel path to my home, I get that feeling again, that something's not right. I ignore it and just continue. We get back to my house and we go inside. We get her things situated. My mom had a day off from work, so I decided it would be nice to make us all a big breakfast. I fry up some bacon and eggs and make some biscuits and gravy. We finish everything up, and my girlfriend and I, we decide that we're gonna head back through the woods to a part of the creek that had a small bank covered in sand. So going into the woods without a gun is a bad idea. I grab the shotgun and some rounds and we get going. As we're walking through the woods, that feeling of dread comes back, and it's worse than before. I almost wanted to say that we should go back home. I wish I had. We get to the quote-unquote beach, for a lack of a better term. We hang around, and after some time I say we should start heading back home. As soon as I ended that sentence, we hear some noises in the distance, some shuffling like if somebody's walking. But then, it sounds like snarling or snorting. No creature could make a sound like this. We get our shit together and we start speed walking back. The noises get more frequent the further we walk. Keep in mind that we're walking through some thick vegetation, underbrush, and trees. I was staying about 10 feet in front of her as we're walking in the woods. About halfway back to the house, my girlfriend dropped her beach towel and reached down to pick it up. As soon as she did, a man came running full speed through the woods, grabbing her by her hair. The whole time I felt like everything happened in slow motion, but yet fast. He was snarling and what sounded like laughing, mixed with screaming and crying. I can't even describe it. It paralyzed me. I was frozen for a split second. Before I continue, let me describe what the guy looked like. He had long matted brown hair. Looked like he hadn't shaved in about a week or so. And he was wearing nothing but jeans that were shredded to hell. Now, I am 6 feet tall, but I'm still not the most threatening looking dude out there. Now back to what I was saying. She started to scream my name, and she started yelling for help. I do always carry a knife with me, mostly for utility purposes, but using it as a weapon against this psycho was the last thing on my mind. I didn't know if he had rabies or some other disease, so I slung my shotgun off my back and racked the slide. If you don't know, just the sound of a shotgun slide can be enough to stop somebody. At least that was my mindset. I didn't have any rounds loaded. However, when I racked the slide, the man turned around and looked at me with the most evil, sadistic smile. And for a split second, I thought he was gonna come after me. Thankfully, he didn't. He then just took off running back into the woods. I grabbed my girlfriend and I pretty much dragged her the rest of the way home, shotgun in my other hand, ready to be used. We get back to the house, nearly bust down the door, slam it shut and lock it. My girlfriend starts to cry. My mom then comes running out of the other room, and she's asking what in the world happened. I explained everything to her. She was stunned, maybe asking if we called the police or sheriff's office. We didn't. We tried to get my girlfriend calmed down. After about 30 minutes, she finally gets a grip on what just happened. I tell her it's gonna be alright, that she's safe, that I won't let anything bad happen to her. She then goes and takes a shower and gets cleaned up. While she's in there, my mom and I talk about what we should do now. I mentioned that maybe we should call the police or the sheriff's office, but again, we didn't. She gets out and I ask her if she wants me to take her home. She says no. I could still see the fear in her eyes. She was terrified. I didn't let anyone know, but I was also terrified. We all were, and we still are. None of us slept that night. I sat up all night drinking pot after pot of coffee, just waiting for that crazy person, whoever it is. As soon as the sun came up, I called my dad and cousin and told them to come over and to bring my cousin's dog. We looked in the woods for 2 hours and found nothing. Looking back on it, maybe it was some sort of crackhead that maybe caught some weird disease, and maybe he went crazy or he was on PCP. My girlfriend is still here, spending the summer break with me. None of us can sleep at night. The sounds that person made, they still echo inside of me, and the image of his face is burned into my brain. Have you heard about the mocking spirits on the REZ? They twist and copy ceremonies, and they are basically tricksters. They say that if you take something from one, you are taking a piece of their trick with you. I'm not sure what that means, but that's why clowns creep me the fuck out, because everybody says that's what they look like. I haven't came across one, but my friend did. She said that during the grand opening of the Wind River Casino in May of 2008, she was working a graveyard shift, and like she normally did, always stopped in the gift shop to talk with her other friend, who also worked there. That night, her friend told her that she had came in 2 hours earlier because there was a large crowd. Her friend told her that she overheard customers talking about a clown that everybody thought was an employee out in the parking lot, making and giving out balloon animals. Just as her friend tells her this, they see a white lady walking inside the casino, holding one of those balloon animals, which was of a dog. They approached her to ask her where she got the balloon animal from. They didn't know anything about an employee dressed as a clown and make some balloon animals. When they asked her, she said, "It was given to me by your clown outside in the parking lot." They both just looked at one another, confused, and told her, "Clown? We don't have a clown." They went out and looked for it, but they didn't see anybody. Weird. Maybe he left. Later that night, around 3 a.m., as people were leaving, security got a call about a clown in the parking lot. When they went outside, they saw a clown standing by a brown pickup truck. As they walked towards them, the clown began going around other cars, ducking and getting further away. By the time that the security guards reached the end of the cars in the parking lot, they couldn't find the clown. They looked everywhere, but it was nowhere to be found. What do y'all think this was? Let me know. We're all from the REZ, right? I'll go first. I want to say that we all have drank before, but I guess what I want to know is what made you stop. You see, I don't drink no more. I learned it's true what they say on the REZ. Alcohol can open you up to other things out there, things that you don't want to invite in. One summer, my cousins and all their friends invited my friend and I to go out drinking with them, up in Slim Butte, South Dakota. We were having a good time, and we all started kind of early. We started drinking at this beautiful spot where there was a river, a couple of cliffs and a fire pit, benches and a place to play horseshoes. And there was also an outhouse. While my cousin and his buddies were playing horseshoes, I really didn't want to play, so I was just sitting by myself. After a few minutes, my friend asked me if I could go to the bathroom with her. I told her we could go since I had to use it as well. We went over to the bathroom, and when I came out, she pointed down this dirt road and asked me, "Where does this path lead to?" "Oh, it's a big circle," I told her. She then said, "Why don't we go check it out and just let the others play around here?" I told her, "Nah, it's getting dark out, and the sun is going down as well." She agreed with me, and we started walking back to the horseshoe pit. As we came up to everybody else, that's when I saw my friend was standing on the other side by my cousin. I looked behind me, and there was nobody there. I was by myself. My heart started racing as I ran up to everyone else, and I explained to them what I saw. To my surprise, my cousin was like, "Well, it's time to go." Apparently everyone knew about all the stories and everything that's happened up here, with the history and all. Well, now that makes sense. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe the spot that we were in. Either way, this made me stop drinking, and I'm sure as hell not going around there anymore. The following story will be told from a female perspective. My husband and I always wanted our son to be adventurous. We wanted to watch him grow up asking questions about everything, seeking out answers, and looking for adventure. It seems like whenever parents have a deep desire for how they want their children to be, somehow their children end up knowing and go the complete opposite direction. As Sam grew up, he became very introverted and would actively ask when it was time for bed. He loved to sleep, and our doctor gave a lot of explanations. All the illnesses had been checked and crossed out before he said, "I think he just likes to escape. He likes his dreams more than he enjoys life." This was at the age of 8. This actually depressed us as parents. What could be so wrong, so uninteresting about his life that he would come home and just sleep? The doctor recommended that we plan family activities that were geared towards him, as a way to engage him in life, give him something to be excited about after school. So for our very first trip, we decided we would go on a hike. The mountains were about an hour away, and we considered this a mild introduction to our new family habit. When we told Sam where we were going, he was excited. We knew then that hiking had been the right activity. On Saturday, we threw together some backpacks, lunch, water, and even a magnifying glass so Sam could inspect everything closely. He was so excited the entire way there. We were all thrilled. When we parked at the trailhead, Sam leaped out of the car and almost ran up the trail without us. I had to call him back so we could keep an eye on him. The hike was short, maybe half a mile, but Sam was trying to run it like a marathon. We kept calling for him to come back and check out this bird, or this butterfly, or a log that looked like Grandpa's face. He would come and look to humor us, but then would run ahead again. Eventually, we gave up trying to point things out and let him just run through the woods. We were pleased that he had taken so well to the trip. For once, Charlie and I felt like we knew what we were doing as parents. And for anyone who's a parent, knows exactly how that feels. We got to the end of the trail and ate our lunch. We were at a ledge along the mountain that was more like a hill. The sun was high overhead, and we could see over the trees for miles. Sam quickly drowned his lunch and we let him run off into the trees. "Don't go too far," I warned him. From the rock where we sat, I was looking at Sam while Charlie went to the bathroom. I saw Sam pick up some sticks, swing them at bushes and tree trunks until the stick broke, then picked up another one. He picked one up that was too short to be swung, but he smiled at it and ran around with it in front of him, using both hands. Finally, he ran over to me and said, "Mom, feel this stick. It feels so cool." "Does it now?" I grinned, taking the stick from him. It was in the shape of a Y, and when I grabbed one of the sides of the Y, it was perfectly smooth. It looked like someone had taken a knife, and from a bigger branch, shaped it into a slingshot stick. The two sides of the Y were curved, almost like handlebars from a bicycle. "Wow, that's really cool," I said to encourage him. He looked at me funny, then ran back into the woods to keep playing. We packed up lunch, stuffed everything back in the backpacks, and announced that we were ready to hike back. Sam came back without complaining, and we began walking down the trail. Instead of running ahead, Sam started to lag behind, still clutching the Y stick. He held it in front of him with both hands as before, and was swinging it around slowly, almost like if it was a magnifying glass and he were searching for something. "Come on, Sam," Charlie started saying when he stood in one place for too long. We both had to stop because he had fallen so far behind. He was pointing his stick into the trees, with his arms stretching out. He kept looking from the stick to the trees, as if he was trying to line something up. We both waited patiently for a few seconds, but the heat was getting to us and we were ready for an air-conditioned car. "Sam, let's go," I called. "Okay," he called back, but he didn't move. Charlie walked back to him. He put his hands on both of Sam's shoulders and guided him down the trail. The whole time, Sam kept both hands firmly on the stick and tried his best to point it back towards the trees where he had been looking. He didn't point it towards where he had been standing. I noticed later, but at a spot past the trail and into the trees, always at one position. Charlie finally got him to where I was at, and we kept walking. Sam eventually stopped pointing his stick, and instead kept it down in front of him, both hands still being used to hold either side of the Y. We ended up driving home, pretty excited that Sam was taking home a souvenir. Our day trip had worked. He was getting involved with life, so I knew we were one step closer to our adventurous son. Over the next couple of days, lots of things started happening. They all seemed strange, not connected in the moment, but later memory would connect them for me. Sam went back to his sleeping routine. He would come home from school, go into his room, and play for a bit by himself while dinner was being made. I got him to work on homework, then served dinner when Charlie got home. After that, he went straight to bed by his own choice. This wasn't abnormal for him, so I wasn't any more concerned than usual. A few nights after we got home, I noticed that Sam's bedroom light was on. Even though he had gone to bed hours ago, his door was closed. So I went to go and turn off his light for him. I figured he might have left it on when he fell asleep or something. But the second I opened the door, Sam leaped off the floor and jumped into bed, like he knew he was in trouble. It was only 7 in the evening. I wasn't about to yell at him for not going to bed when he said he was, but his rapid jump into the bed had me worried. "Sam, what's up?" "Nothing," he said in that kiddish tone that says that I didn't do anything. I looked around the room and saw what I always saw. His toys were out and lined up in some game he must have been playing. Nothing was out of place. "You jumped up as soon as I came in. Is there anything wrong?" "No," he said. "Well, okay," I said slowly, unsure of what else to say. However, he looked at me with untold terror in his eyes. Are you sure there's nothing wrong?" I pressed. "I can hang out with you for a bit if you want." He stared right through me, his eyes wide, and it took him a few seconds to reply. No, Mother. I'm going to bed now. Can you, turn out the light?" I blinked. He's never called me Mother in his life. I should have pushed myself and sat on his bed and talked until he admitted what was wrong. But I didn't. Charlie called my name, and it distracted me. I told him good night and turned off the light and shut the door. Talking later on with Charlie about it, Charlie thought that maybe he had somehow discovered masturbation. Even at his young age, when you rub around on the floor the right way, it just happens. Apparently, that was how he had discovered it. So I chalked the situation up to that. Sam also continued carrying that white stick around everywhere. He always kept it within reach. During dinner, he kept it on the table. When I told him that sticks don't belong on the dining room table, he kept it on his chair next to him. He took it to bed and kept it next to his head. He even took it to school. I tried fighting him on it once, but he claimed that he was taking it to show and tell. I was about to insist that he leave it home, but he looked like he might cry if I came down firm. So I let him on the condition that if his teacher mentioned it to me, that I would make him leave it home, and he agreed. One day, Charlie was taking out the garbage and the bag got caught on the door jamb. The contents of the bag spilled all over the floor, and he quietly cursed and went to get another bag. That was when he found about 20 of Sam's toys in the trash. They varied from stuffed animals to action figures. Confused, Charlie asked me if I had thrown them away, or if I was punishing Sam for something. I told him no, and was equally puzzled. Sam, for some unknown reason, had been throwing his own toys away. Together, after dinner, we sat down with Sam at the table to ask about the toys. We saw it as a cry for help. They were selected, he said in response. They weren't doing a good enough job, so they were fired. Their time was up. Charlie then told Sam that we don't throw toys away because they cost money and we don't waste things. Sam nodded, but I saw his hands clutch the sides of the white stick tightly under the table. I knew he was in stress. Something was going on. We ended the conversation on a light note. and Sam understood why we were upset. He promised not to throw away any more toys, then ran off to bed. I just remember thinking how strange the sentence was. Their time was up. That was an adult line. It's not something you hear from kids. Sam's school sent an email to all parents about 2 weeks after our hiking trip. The principal pleaded with parents to not let their children come to school if their child was sick, as there was a very serious flu going around the school. He even admitted that 5 teachers and 30 students had been sick over the last week alone. I showed it to Charlie, but he didn't find it as weird as I did. Just tell Sam to wash his hands more often, he said. The final straw for me came a few nights later. It was a Wednesday night when I woke up for no reason. Charlie was snoring next to me, but in between snores, I heard a whisper. Fear seized my throat, and I lifted my head off the pillow slowly to peer at the bedroom door. Someone was moving in the dark, stumbling along. Someone small and short. Irritated, I got up and walked to the door. I saw Sam skip away, as if he were crossing a field of spiders, and was desperate not to get any on his shoes. Sam, I whispered, walking out after him. I turned the corner into the family room, but he wasn't there. That's when I heard bare feet race across the kitchen floor, and that made me angry. The little shit was hiding from me. I walked through the family room and noticed that the clock on the wall was way louder than normal. Or maybe I was hypersensitive because I was exhausted. When I entered the kitchen, Sam was facing me. He stood next to the fridge, and the small light from it was showing his expression. He was terrified, and his little white stick was pointed right at me. Sam, I said, annoyed. I need water, he said, still looking at me with his eyes wide open. It was an obvious lie, but not one abnormal for kids caught up past their bedtime. Alright then, get some water, I said. Can, you get it? He asked me, still clutching the stick and pointing it my way. He must have seen my quote-unquote mom look, because he re-emphasized, please. I walked ahead, and that's when I noticed that he pointed the stick around me. He was pointing at something behind me. I looked around really fast and stared into the empty darkness of the family room. The clock was still loud. It sounded like a person saying the actual words. I looked around the room for a full 30 seconds, and nothing moved. What are you doing up, Sam? I asked, turning back to face him. He looked at me with real, true fear in his eyes. The stick was shaking in his hand. Sam, I said, snapping a bit. It's not time yet, he said, barely glancing at me. His gaze was transfixed beyond me. I'm not ready yet. For half a second, I wondered if he was pretending to sleepwalk. Then I wondered if he was actually sleepwalking. Then my tiredness washed over me, and I got annoyed. It's time for bed, I insisted, walking towards him. But still, he kept his eyes behind me, and the stick was pointing into the family room. Okay, he said, defeated as I approached. He took slow, unwilling steps towards the family room. I stood behind him, watching to make sure he went to bed. I saw his head look back and forth, scanning the room as he entered. He was looking for something. Then, he looked back at me, and suddenly, he screamed. With sudden movement, I turned around, hands up and ready to attack whatever was there. But nothing but darkness and the far kitchen wall. I glared down at him. He was still shaking, pointing his stick into the empty kitchen. But I was beyond annoyed now. The stick had been out of control for weeks. I think you need a break from this, I said, snatching the stick from his hand. No, he said. Sam practically leaped at me, but I jumped out the way. This was the only way I assured myself. This stick wasn't healthy after all. Don't, he cried and yelled, followed me through the family room and into the hall. All the attention that he had pointed into the kitchen was now directed at me. He tried to jump and grab at the stick, but I held it above my head. I felt like an older sibling teasing my younger brother, but this was needed. I regretted waking Charlie up, but I pushed my way into my room, tossed the stick onto the floor, and turned back to get Sam out. "Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me," he demanded. I pushed him out and shut the bedroom door. I flipped the lock on the handle. What's going on?" Charlie mumbled. I took the stick away. He was playing with it all night, I said, coming back to bed. Sam was pounding on the door. I convinced Charlie that we should ignore him, let him tire himself out, and tomorrow we will lecture him. He verbally agreed, even though I could sense that he didn't agree inside. It took an hour, but Sam eventually gave up, and we ended up falling asleep. The next morning, my throat felt like I had swallowed sandpaper. The flu, of course. My stomach rumbled and made me get out of bed. I found myself starting to run to the master bathroom after my stomach turned nauseous. I threw up the dinner from the night before. Stumbling out of the bathroom, I had to move aside for Charlie, who couldn't make it to the toilet and threw up into the sink. "Not you as well," I sighed. "I haven't been this sick since I was a kid," he moaned, rinsing his mouth out. I rubbed my eyes, still tired from Sam's ordeal last night, and got into the shower with the lights off, hoping it would help my light sensitivity. Charlie decided to call in sick and rest for the day. I got ready for the day, so I wouldn't be around in my pajamas all day, feeling even more sick. When I was completely ready, I unlocked the bedroom door and stepped out. Sam was nowhere in sight, which actually meant that he had gone back to bed. Good. "I hope you're getting ready for school," I said loudly, but I didn't get a response. I went to his room and found the door shut as usual. I twisted the handle and pushed, but the door was stuck. "What the hell?" I said quietly. Using my shoulder, I shoved hard against the door. I heard a clatter, then the door opened. As I entered, I saw three things right away. 1. A chair had been placed under the door handle in order to prevent the door from opening so easily. 2. The window was wide open, with the screen missing. And 3. Sam wasn't in his bedroom. We called the police immediately after searching the house from top to bottom. If we hadn't called them, I have no idea where we would have started. Maybe we should have driven around, looking for him. Maybe called his friends' homes to see if they knew where he was. The police helped, and I spent half a day sitting by the phone, puking my guts out and worrying about Sam. The police were out driving around, searching for Sam with his picture taped to their dashboards. Charlie was dead asleep when I went into the bedroom. I was debating about lying down, but I couldn't sleep while Sam was missing. I saw the stick, which had landed partially under the bed when I threw it last night. All this because of the stick. Maybe the doctor was wrong. Maybe he did have something wrong with him. But it was mental, psychological. Maybe instead of a doctor, we should take him to a psychologist. Attempting to stay awake, I decided to search the house for the 15th time, but this time, I carried the stick with me. "Sam!" Loud enough to be heard while I walked through the family room, the kitchen, and to the stairs. Maybe he was hiding in the storage room downstairs, maybe behind a few boxes. "Sam," I said again, "I have your stick. I'm sorry I took it. Please come out. You're not in trouble." I descended the stairs, and halfway down, I thought I heard him reply. It was faint, far away. The words were impossible to make out. "Sam!" I cried desperately, spinning around on the stairs to try to figure out if he was upstairs or downstairs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a leg move around the corner at the bottom of the stairs, towards the storage room. I was correct. I knew it. I sped down the stairs and turned the corner. The door was closed. I tried to twist the handle, but he had locked it. I pleaded while reaching for the key at the top of the door frame. When he didn't unlock the door, I stuck the key in and twisted the handle.
The door popped open to reveal our pitch-black storage room. The room was in the middle of the house and had no windows. It contained our water heater and the control system for the heat and AC. The room was so large, Charlie had built shelves for us to keep our seasonal decorations, our camping supplies, and extra food and water. "Sam," I said more quietly, feeling uneasy. Something about the room was getting to me. "How does the clock tick, Mother?" Sam said from somewhere in the room. I froze. The word mother made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something's not right. "Sam, come on out now," I said. There was light spilling in from the doorway, but it didn't illuminate enough of the room for me to search. I slowly stepped towards the center of the room, where a string was hanging down from a single light in the ceiling. With one hand, I kept a hold of the stick. With the other, I reached out to search for the string. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there somewhere. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and at that exact instant, my hand brushed against hair. Long, greasy hair at my shoulder height. Sam wasn't that tall. The hair was tangled and long. I yelped and jumped back, startled by the door and the hair at the same time. Then I heard Sam giggle. "Do you know how the clock ticks?" It came from my left, along the wall. The hair had been to my right. What else was in here with us? I was paralyzed. I couldn't see a damn thing. My phone was upstairs, so I couldn't use that as a flashlight. The ceiling light was somewhere in front of me, and the door was somewhere behind me. But every time I would reach out, I remembered touching the greasy hair and recoiled. "Charlie!" I called upward, hoping he could hear me, hoping he was awake. "Tick tock, tick tock," Sam said again. My brain instantly remembered the sound the clock had made the night before. It was the same voice, faintly a voice, and faintly background noise at the same time. "Sam," I whispered, but I had to throw up again. I swallowed the bile and felt one more time for the string. It brushed my hand, and I jumped back before realizing that I was feeling the string, not greasy hair. Relieved, I launched my hand out and grabbed at the string. It swung into my hand and I yanked on it hard. The single light buzzed to life, and something moved to my right. I screamed at the top of my lungs when I saw white and black. It's taken me a long time to place the shape, but now I'm sure. The skull of a deer, partially covered by stringy hair, darted away from the light, circling behind me. In absolute terror, I squeezed my eyes shut and didn't dare open them. In the battle for fight or flight, I buried my head hoping it didn't see me. I started sobbing and wanted to run for the door, but I was too scared to open my eyes. "Mommy," Sam called from my left. I didn't respond. I was sobbing too hard. "Mommy, help. I'm stuck." Very, very slowly, I moved one finger and looked to the side. Sam was huddled up on the top shelf. I couldn't see his face, but I saw jeans and his favorite shirt. "Sam, come on down and let's go," I whispered. I can't. It's gonna get me," Sam was whimpering. I tried hard not to sob again. "Please, come get me." I fought through the fear and stepped towards the shelf, still covering my face and using a small gap in my fingers to navigate. When I reached the shelf, I closed my eyes and held my arms up. "Climb into my arms, Sam. I'll get you down, and then we'll go get your dad." My voice started breaking at the end. I'm stuck. My shirt is caught," he cried. "Alright, I said, trying to be brave for him. "Guide my hand to where it's at, and I'll get you loose." He paused. "It's at the back of the shelf. You can't reach." I bit my lip to stop its trembling. With both eyes still closed, I placed my hands on the top shelf, and my foot on the bottom shelf. The stick was placed on the shelf so I could use both my hands. I pulled myself up so I could reach, and balance myself. Where is it?" I asked, refusing to open my eyes. "Reach here," he said. and I could feel him rotate so I could reach over him. I did, and that's when my hand ran straight into a mess of tangled, greasy hair. My eyes opened in shock. It stared back at me for only half a second, but in that split second, it spoke.
Do you know how the clock ticks? It's fed by death.
The shelf under my feet collapsed, and as I fell, my hands pulled the shelf until it came over, coming down on top of me. I woke up in the hospital, much to Charlie and Sam's relief. It was a lot of information and questions. They asked why I was down there, and instead of sounding insane, I said that I had been searching for Sam again, just in case. Sam had been found walking on the road in the general direction of the hiking spot. He wasn't very far, thankfully, and was unharmed. When Charlie practically yelled, asking why the hell he had left in the middle of the night alone, Sam said he needed to find another stick to stop the monsters. The police were, of course, recommending that he talk to a psychologist. Then he overheard the conversation. Charlie didn't wake up until the police were at our door with Sam in hand. That was about an hour after the shelf had collapsed on me. Sam and Charlie had gone looking for me in the house and found me under the collapsed shelf. The police had been right there, thankfully, and I was rushed off to the hospital. Some of my ribs were broken, and so was my left leg. The shelf that had collapsed on me held our camping tent, the fake Christmas tree, and a few other half-empty boxes. I was lucky it wasn't the shelf that was holding the food. The door was locked when they got to it, and the key wasn't in the lock, so they had to break it down. The second that Sam saw the scene, he apparently stood over me in a protective stance, looking all around. Charlie left to get the police before they left upstairs. A couple of days after I got released from the hospital, and after Charlie had recovered from a flu that knocked him off his feet, I finally got a chance to talk to Sam. I asked him right away what was going on. It took a few minutes of him denying that anything was wrong. I saw the monster, I admitted, which a parent really shouldn't do to their child. You did? He asked. I nodded. You and Dad never saw them before. When did you see them? Them? I asked nervously. That's when Sam told me what had been happening for the last few weeks. He had stumbled upon the stick by tripping over it. He said that the stick had spoken to him, and he took it to play with it. He said that whenever he had the stick, he could see the monsters. They were scary, but they stayed away when I would point the stick at them. A few of them had followed us home, walking alongside us on the trail. They came into the house at night and snuck around. They came into Sam's room, our room, everywhere. They told me that someone had to die. They told me that you had to die. So he offered the monsters toy sacrifices to satisfy their hunger. But he said that wasn't enough. Whenever I didn't have the stick, I could feel them try to grab me, but they stayed away whenever I had the stick. They kept telling me that your time was up. The time of who? I said. Yours, Mom, Sam said. They sat with him at night. They tried to convince him to put the stick down. They would offer him candy. At school, they follow him and say they would hurt people until he put away the stick. 5 teachers and 30 students ended up getting the flu. He held onto the stick as often as he could and patrolled the house at night to keep them out of my room. That was until I took the stick. Apparently, he had grabbed the stick from a skeleton in the woods. It looked like an animal skeleton. He had seen another one just like it when he got the first one, so he was going to go back and get the second one so that the monsters would stop smiling. One had actually followed him on the streets, he said, but now they were all gone. And after looking through the mess of the collapsed shelves, so was the stick. Sam told his psychologist about our conversation. His psychologist told me very angry that I shouldn't have admitted to him anything like that, because it would actually feed into his delusions. So now he was being looked at for any other possible conditions. I'm starting to think I should be tested too. How else do I explain everything that happened? One detail stands out that I can't explain though. I had unlocked the door to the storage room and left the key in the handle. So why was the key found dangling from the light bulb string?
Hey everyone, I could really use some help here as I'm starting to get really worried. Last night, I was followed by a very creepy lady when I was out hiking in my local trails at state land. I have hiked and hunted these trails my whole life, and not once have I encountered anything like this. Don't get me wrong, I had my fair share of scary things happen to me when I gone solo camping, but this has scared me right to the bone, and now I think I'm being followed. Let me explain what's been going on, and hopefully one of you may be able to help me out here. Last night, Christmas Eve, I had nothing to do as I have no kids, no wife, and my parents live 3 hours away. So to kill some time and not be bored, I had the idea of going on a solo hike through our local trails. Like I said, I have hiked these trails many times. This time, however, I'll never forget. I got out to the trailhead about 5 p.m. I had my headlamp on, and I knew these trails like the back of my hand, so I wasn't too concerned with the sunlight quickly fading. I don't know if any of you are from Michigan, but we're having a surprisingly sunny and warm December. However, it still gets dark here around 5:30. The weather was beautiful and perfect for a nighttime walk. We don't have too many nice winter days like this, so I wanted to take full advantage and enjoy warm night air. So I got out of my truck and started up the trailhead. This specific trail I was on started out in dense pine trees, and after a mile or so, it opened up to these awesome valleys with huge fields. Most of the time, if I was quiet enough and looked around, I could see some deer grazing and other wildlife. This time though, there was nothing. I was quite surprised there wasn't a single animal, considering how beautiful of a night it was. Now that I think about it, I didn't see or hear even a squirrel in the pines, which is very uncommon. There are many in these parts, and no matter the time, I can always hear them running and playing in the trees. This time, it was dead quiet. I kept on walking though, and just enjoyed the peace and quiet. Once I exited the pines and entered the first field, I started to get this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, like something was watching me. I chalked it up to me being paranoid because of the lack of wildlife, and continued on. I wish I would have turned back right then and there, but if I did, I wouldn't be here telling you the story, would I? Anyways, I continued on and the feeling just intensified as I progressed. At this point, I was a good mile and a half in, and it dawned on me that there was something out here with me. I was screwed. Not a single person knew that I was out here. I never had cell phone reception in this area. If some kind of animal was stalking me, I would just be done for. I was kicking myself in the ass for not bringing my handgun with me, honestly. We don't have a whole lot of dangerous game here in central Michigan, so I didn't think twice about it when leaving. I was nearing the end of the first field, and before I stepped into the next little section of pines, I decided to take a quick look around, just to satisfy that nagging feeling in the back of my mind. At first, I didn't see anything, but just as I was about to turn back around, something caught my attention. There was slight movement, back about 100 yards behind me. What the heck? I whispered as I squinted to get a better look. I wasn't sure, but it looked like a figure, half hidden behind a bush. I stared closely, and when I saw it shift slightly, my heart leaped into my throat. The figure was definitely humanoid, and it appeared to be staring right at me. "Hey," I foolishly called out, hoping whoever it was would simply identify itself. As soon as I said that, the figure quickly ducked behind the bush, disappearing from my view. My heart was racing pretty good at this point, a million worst case scenarios running through my mind. I couldn't help but think it was a serial killer,
ready to pounce and stab me to death, stashing my body in these woods. I turned around and started walking a little faster, trying to distance myself from whoever was out here with me. To my horror, I heard twigs and sticks snapping a little ways behind me as the person started to follow me. "I have a gun," I shouted, trying to scare them into leaving me alone. I looked back over my shoulder to see where they were at, and when I did, my heart started hammering in my chest. I swear I thought I was gonna pass out. The person was now maybe 20 feet behind me, and I could tell it was a woman, except that her jaw was hung open, as if in complete shock. Her eyes open extremely wide, staring directly at me. When I first turned around, she was still walking, and the way she moved scared me so bad it sent me into a dead sprint upon looking at her. I know it sounds kind of funny, but believe me, it wasn't. She was tiptoeing as quiet as she could, in the same way a cartoon character would try to be sneaky. Her legs taking these huge, lanky steps. Everything about the way she looked and moved just sent these shivers down my spine. "Leave me alone," I shouted as I ran away as fast as I could. That's when I started to hear her laughing as she chased me. She was no longer trying to be quiet, as I could hear her crashing through the woods, catching up to me rather quickly. I decided to turn and run off the trail once I rounded a bend, where I knew she couldn't see me for a moment. As soon as I stepped off, I quickly hid behind a tree and turned off my headlamp. After a couple of seconds, I heard the sound of her heavy, odd footsteps as she got closer and closer. I held my breath and slammed my eyes shut, sending a quick prayer to the Lord above to just let her pass. Her horrible laughing sounds echoed through the woods as she thankfully ran past me. As soon as her footsteps sounded a little further down, I jumped out from behind the tree and took off running back the way I came. I hadn't even gotten 20 feet when I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from behind me in the woods. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, running on pure adrenaline and the will to live. I just knew if she caught me, I wouldn't make it, and it would be a horrible, painful way to die. The sound of her footsteps once again got louder and louder as she got closer. How the hell was she running so fast? I felt a huge wave of relief as I saw the entrance to the trail, maybe 100 feet ahead. Somehow, I ran even faster as I knew my truck would be right there. I digged into my pockets and fished my keys out. She let out another hideous scream as she got even closer, maybe 50 feet behind me now. I got into my truck and jumped in, putting my keys in the ignition and starting it in record time. I backed out and peeled out of there as fast as I could without losing control. After one final scream of frustration, I looked in my rearview mirror to watch the woods disappear. The whole drive home I kept checking behind me, afraid I would see her chasing after me, even though I knew it would be impossible at 60 miles per hour. 5 minutes later, I pulled into my driveway and jumped out of the truck once parked, running full blast inside. I slammed the door behind me and locked it. I ran all around my house, locking every window and door, not feeling safer until I knew I was locked up and safe. I walked upstairs to my bedroom and laid in bed. After a little while, I must have passed out from being exhausted. I awoke to the pitch black room and quiet house. My heart started racing as I remembered the lady from the forest, and I jumped up to look out my window. "No," I whispered as I looked in my backyard. The lady from the woods was standing in my backyard, slack-jawed and staring right up at me. My heart once again pounded so hard I thought I would faint. As soon as she noticed me, she smiled this huge, impossible, wide ear-to-ear grin. She then shrieked that awful scream again and ran back into the woods. Needless to say, I didn't sleep after that. And that's why I'm here. If anyone has an idea what the hell this lady is, as I know there's no way she's human, can someone please let me know? Maybe give me some advice on what to do here. Thanks in advance. My great-grandparents
They were never forced to go to residential boarding schools. You know, those that took so many others away from their traditions. And because of this, they were able to hold on to a lot of their old ways, a lot of their traditions, and that's how they grew up. They lived deep in the mountains, far from the influence of outside beliefs or cultures. And that's why our family believes that their connection to these teachings, these traditions, actually protected a lot of our family. So I got a story to tell you. One that's been passed down from my mom and others about something they experienced a long time ago. My mom, when she was just a girl, she lived with my grandparents in a hole-gone way out in the middle of nowhere. Life on the REZ back then was so tough and lonely. They didn't have the things that we have now. No electricity, no running water, and definitely not a single road. If you wanted to get somewhere, you traveled by horse or wagon, and even then, it took a whole day just to reach the nearest trading post. Some of the winters were long, and everyone had to work together to survive. Each day was a routine, herding the sheep, gathering firewood, and making sure that the hogan stayed warm. My grandpa was well known across the reservation as a traditional medicine man. People from all over would seek him to perform ceremonies. He actually taught my mom a lot about our traditions, and she always felt a sense of security around him. Like he always had the right words to say to make you feel protected. My grandma was even more practical. She was strong, and she was never scared so easy. Even though she was blind from scarlet fever, she never let that slow her down. She knew how to take care of her family, and her presence actually made my mom feel safe, no matter what. One day, my mom and her uncle were told to herd the sheep like always. They were young and liked to mess around, playing with the sheepdog while they were supposed to be working. The sun was already starting to set as they headed back home, and the cold air began to settle in. The land was quiet, almost too quiet, and something about it felt strange, as my mom said. As they were walking, they started hearing this noise behind them. Sounded like a horse that was following them. But every time they turned around, there was nothing, just trees swaying a little bit in the wind, and the bushes rustling. But they couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, lurking just out of sight. The further they walked, the more the air felt heavy. Everything was quiet, almost like something was gonna happen. My mom then said that she felt a coldness creeping up her spine, and even the sheep seemed to get nervous, almost like they were sensing something. The sound of their footsteps in the light snow seemed too loud, echoing through all the silence. It was starting to get dark fast. As they neared the corral, the smell hit them, a thick, rotting stench like something was dead. They hurried up to close up the corral and rushed back inside the hogan. But my grandma noticed right away that a few sheep were missing. She then came inside the hogan and handed my mom and her uncle flashlights, and she sent them back out to find the stragglers. I guess my grandma knew that since they liked to play with the sheepdog and be distracted, she figured they lost them on the way here. So she came inside the hogan and handed my mom and her uncle flashlights and sent them back out to find the stragglers. The snow started falling again, and the wind was picking up, making it difficult to see. My mom was actually good at seeing in the dark, but her uncle wasn't so lucky. As they walked through the snow, they kept hearing it again, that same sound, almost like a horse galloping behind them, staying just out of sight. The smell was back as well, but stronger now, as if whatever was following them was getting closer. The cold stung their faces and the snow muffled everything else, making the sound of that horse even louder. They did end up finding the missing sheep, along with a newborn lamb, and so they headed back. My mom and her uncle took turns carrying it, and on the way back, the smell was getting worse. Her uncle was too scared to say anything, and again, every time they looked back, nothing was there. They hurried back to the corral, herding the remaining sheep inside, but as they were closing up, my mom said that they felt like somebody was watching them. When they got back to the hogan, my grandma was waiting for them, but she knew something was wrong. The sheepdog were nowhere to be found, which was strange. They always stayed close by, and my mom figured her grandpa was still out doing a ceremony, since he often got called away for his medicine work. When they got back to the Hogan, my grandma was waiting for them. The sheepdog were nowhere to be found, and even my grandpa wasn't there. Now the sheepdog situation was strange. They always stayed close by. After dinner, my grandma asked my mom and her uncle to take some extra milk out to the lambs. The snow had already stopped falling, and it was still quiet outside, but not in a peaceful way. It was too quiet. As they walked towards the corral, they opened up the door, and when they did, that's when they saw two big animals sitting in between the sheep. They weren't acting like animals though. They were just there sitting, talking, speaking. My mom simply described them as big dogs that were just sitting across from each other. My mom's uncle froze, too terrified to move. He just stood there, staring at these animals back in shock. My mom, sensing something was very wrong, pulled them away and they ran back to the Hogan. When they got inside, she told my grandma what they had seen. Her uncle still couldn't speak, too shaken by what he had just witnessed. My grandma, who wasn't one to back down from anything, she wasn't about to let something mess with her sheep or her family. My mom followed her back to the corral, moving carefully through the snow. The two dogs were still there, still sitting among the sheep, and still talking. My grandma aimed the rifle at them, and the moment that they heard the click of the gun, they started moving. My grandma was able to fire and hit one of them, and it let out this awful scream. They were still able to get away through the back door, running away on all fours. Yanagloshis, my grandma said, her voice steady but grim. My mom couldn't believe it. This was the first time she saw one of them. Her family had told her about them, but she had never seen one of them before. Later that night, in the Hogan, they started hearing the same sound as earlier, the sound of horses running outside. When my grandpa finally got home, they told him everything. The next morning, he decided to track these dogs himself. He followed the tracks for most of the day, carefully analyzing all the signs and tracks they left behind. He saw that the tracks were strange, like part human, part animal, leading him through snow-covered land. Along the way, he noticed that some of the things were off. Ravens were circling in the sky, making all sorts of noises. He said that these were signs from the land itself that something unnatural had passed through, almost like a warning. The tracks eventually led him to a small town. When I say town, I don't mean like a populated city or anything. Just a close community with a few Hogans and stores and stuff. He was stopping at every Hogan and vendor, well, every stand, and talking to the people there. He said that at one specific stand, there was a man that was sitting behind it. The man who lived there was old and knew my grandpa. When my grandpa got there, the man was sitting in the corner, barely moving, with his leg wrapped up. His wife, who was actually the one selling things, said that he had been injured recently, but she didn't say how. My grandpa didn't ask any questions. He already knew. The talk was that the old man got better for a while, but he eventually died a year later while sleeping. As far as the other dog goes, he was never found. To this day, we're told that if you ever find out who the Skinwalker is, that person is supposed to die right away or within a year from the same date of the event. It's creepy, but my mom has so many other stories like this, and you have to be on the reservation to experience them. Another day, another dollar towards beer money, I thought as I pulled into my company's parking lot. As I walked into the office, I heard the deep voice of my manager Jerry say, "Hey bub, You're going out of the area today. Out of area, meaning I was gonna be driving to the middle of nowhere, maybe get one job completed, then had to be back here by sundown. As I was pondering the shitty situation, Jerry walked up to me and slapped me on the back like an alcoholic dad who doesn't know the meaning of too hard and said, "Bobby, you hear me? Yeah, I'm making less money for the good of the company, right?" Jerry frowned. The sarcasm in my voice was almost beyond his grasp, but eventually he got it. "Listen here, you little ass clown. The company's gonna pay double for your gas. We'll take the drive into account for your bonus and give you free service for your truck. They treat us good if you do good by them." And Jerry, a balding middle-aged manager who would always give the same speech in the same tone to everyone who had ever complained about doing anything extra. Of course, I had to ask him why I was the one doing it. "Well, because of Roger," Jerry said, referring to the guy that worked the northmost tip of our area. "He decided that he hates you, and he called off this morning." "But why am I the one who has to take his work?" I asked. "Because you're an asshole who needs to learn his work ethics. And don't go talking about how you served in the Marines and how much you work. I fought in the Gulf under General Norman Schwarzkopf, and I know what hard work is. People like you turn the corpse into a bunch of lazies." Jerry, if you didn't notice, was a Marine like myself, but he served the Marines in the time before the quote-unquote lazy generation, as he dubbed the millennials. But to be honest, he was a warehouse manager, like he is now. When I was in the Marines, I was busy dodging pissed off Taliban snipers and IEDs, so screw him. I know, Jerry, I'm scared because I actually wore my body armor. But anywho, before we start this, where the hell am I going? I ended up asking, trying to avoid any normal arguments. Jerry sighed and said, "Out in the Ozarks, near Grand Cap." Grand Cap? Literally a post office and a general store, smack dab in the middle of a massive forest that goes for about 2 miles off of AR-7. The customer needs 2 rooms done and a satellite set up as well, Jerry finished. He sounded like he may have felt bad, because he knew how much I hated setting up those dishes. The chance of us actually getting a signal for the satellite was little to none. So, I'm driving 120 miles out to the mountains, so I can tell some backwoods inbred that he can't get his TV because of the trees. I must have been a killer in the past life, I complained. And yes, Jerry, I know I'm gonna be compensated. A couple of minutes later, I loaded up my truck and started the long trip north into the mountains. I knew the drive was gonna take over an hour and a half on empty roads, so I started to let my mind wander. I've been with cable, satellites, and more for about 2 years now, and it still amazes me I haven't quit or killed myself yet. The hours suck. The pay is alright, and all the upper management just spends most of their time kissing the big cable companies, begging for scraps. Now, you may be asking yourself, how the hell did a combat veteran with access to the GI Bill and 4 years of leadership training end up installing cable in Arkansas? The best way to answer that is, instead of taking classes and getting a skilled labor job, I wanted to be a badass. At 18, I only wanted one gig, the infantry. It gives you the ability to act under pressure and learn how to lead men into combat. But when you get out, most jobs want people with applicable skills. So I tried college, a state school filled with former professionals turned professors, expansive libraries brimming with information, companies from all over the nation recruiting to get the pick of the best candidates. Shit happens, and I got this gig while I was directionless. Speaking of that, that's the word used to describe me by my court-appointed therapist. I'm gonna leave most of the details out, but some little punk decided to tell me a few things, and I decided that him eating my fist would be the best solution. One thing led to another, and I had to go see a shrink for my quote-unquote PTSD. PTSD my ass. I like what I did over there.
get up, go on patrol, shoot a few guns, then go back. But now life is complicated. I gotta pay rent. I have to be politically correct. Well, whatever. Maybe I'll be lucky and whoever this customer is will be a super hot student staying at her parents' cabin for winter break. Maybe when she answers the door, she'll look me in the eyes and fall in love with me. Looking back, I really wish that was the case. As I got closer to the address, the GPS on my phone started acting a bit strange, but it was able to steer me to the right driveway. Well, driveway was the word. It was more or less a dirt path shrouded by old as hell white oak and cottonwood. I heard leaves and pines crinkle under the weight of my truck as I steered down the narrow track. As I drove deeper, I noticed that this part of the forest was dense, and it barely looked touched. See, I went camping in the Ozarks every year with my dad up until I was 17. Almost everywhere we went, you could tell the woods had been affected by people in some way. You know, random piece of trash, carved initials of young lovers, tire and human tracks and all that stuff. But these trees, this path and everything, it seemed to have remained untouched, even though someone apparently lived out here. It was weird to say the least, especially because there seemed to be no tire tracks going up the driveway. The path continued on and on, to the point where I didn't think I could fit my truck on it much longer. Then, I saw an open area, about 200 yards ahead of me. I silently thanked the man upstairs that I wouldn't have to drag all my equipment through the woods. As I approached the opening, I caught my first glimpse of the house, or better yet, shit pile that I would be working on today. It slumped at around 2 stories, with rotted wood siding, and maybe 2 out of 10 windows not smashed in. The front lawn was just dirt, leaves and pines everywhere. I couldn't fucking believe my eyes. How am I supposed to install TV boxes when there is no power? I thought. This is probably some redneck with some sort of custom wind turbine strapped to a tree. He's most likely gonna ask why he can't get his NASCAR. I scanned for the front door, and I saw a big plane covering the largest of the house's openings. I decided that was my best bet as the front door. At this point, I was just hoping no one was home. There was no car. Everything was overrun, and there couldn't possibly be a decent source of power anywhere on this property. But I know God was definitely not on my side that day. As I approached the front door, I saw some movement beyond one of the non-smashed-in windows. I may have seen some crazy stuff overseas, but someone actually living out here in this busted house couldn't be someone I wanted to be alone with. But if I didn't at least try to complete the job, I wasn't gonna get paid any bonus. As I arrived to this front door, plank-looking thing, I slowly reached my hand to knock, but before I could, it swung open. Behind the door was a person. This guy stood at 6 feet tall, no more than 120 pounds, white as a ghost and seemed to be made of only bones and thinly stretched skin. He looked like someone had sucked all the fat out of his body. But the creepiest part was his eyes. They seemed empty, the pupils so expansive that I couldn't make out the color, and barely see the whites. I realized I had been staring, and looked down at the papers that I had. "Good morning, sir. Is this the residence of Mr. Vitter?" I barely got it out before he opened the black hole that was his mouth. "Why have you come?" His words rolled off his tongue with a thick Scandinavian accent. I could barely respond. "Why have you come?" Here I was trying to install a satellite for Count Dracula, and he doesn't ask me what I want or who I am. But why have I come? Who the hell says that? "I'm your cable technician, here to get your TV set up." It was all I could get out with his pitch black eyes staring right through me. He continued to stare for what felt like an hour, until he opened up his mouth again. "Come forth into my home. I will show you where you will be working. But be warned, I don't like anything in my home touched. Your business here is the TVs only. Is that understood?" This guy looked like a fucking Skeletor and sounds like a James Bond villain, I thought. Yes, sir. I won't touch any of your stuff, or knickknacks or personals. Just want to set up the TVs and head back to Little Rock. He stared at me for a second and turned towards the dark house, beckoning for me to follow. As I followed behind him into the ramshackle house, I couldn't help but notice the smell of decaying meat mixed with some sort of rusted copper. It was almost like I wandered into an abandoned slaughterhouse, and I could smell the years of blood of animal parts. Don't think like that. This guy is most likely a hunter who lives off the grid, and finally decided that he missed the ESPN and called us up, I thought. But the smell wasn't the only off-putting characteristic of Mr. Vitter's home. It was the decor, or the lack of. The front door opened directly into what can barely be described as a living room. The only sign that an actual human lived here was a rocking chair. The wood was badly scorched, and the only parts that weren't burned were heavily frayed. I felt like if I sat down in it, I would be pulling 1,000 splinters out of my ass. I took my eyes off the chair, and I finally saw the TV that I would be connecting to the receiver. I say TV sarcastically because I'm pretty sure the set that I grew up with 29 years ago was even more advanced than whatever this thing was. I saw that this old thing still had the original wood paneling and everything. I hope to God that I had some sort of adapter in the truck, because there's no way I was going to tell Dr. Frankenstein that I didn't have the parts. This is the first TV. It's from 1949. I was told your company specialized in connecting new age media to these type of TV sets. Am I correct? Mr. Vitter turned and looked at me with his empty eyes as he asked. Yes, sir. It should be. I can always figure this out. I lied. The oldest TV I set up was from the 90s. I'm so fucked, I thought. I'm gonna punch Roger in the fucking throat as soon as I see him. You better buy me a beer for calling in. Good. I would be very disappointed if I don't have my shows, Vitter said, as he smiled and put this emphasis on very. He let me pause in the living room to assess the back of the TV. One look told me I was screwed. This TV didn't have a single connection I recognized, but I had an idea. The job description I received for Mr. Vitter stated that he didn't want the satellite on the roof. He wanted the satellite on a pole, and from my experiences with these type of mounts, there is a high chance that this guy won't get a signal, or even that the ground ain't right for a mount. All I had to do was take my satellite reader and pretend there wasn't a trace of a signal. Oh, and I forgot to mention, explain to this guy that he wasn't getting his shows until my manager came out and verified. Fuck it. Jerry can die for the company he loves. I'll get over it. As my spirits started to lighten and my mood turned from depressed and terrified to less depressed and slightly hopeful, that's when my customer decided that I was staring at his TV for too long. I will lead you to the next TV. Hopefully this next one will not take long for you to study. He sounded mad, so I gave him the go-ahead to bring me further into his creepy-ass house. So I saw the power outlet behind the TV, but no power lines to the house. Is there a generator connected somewhere? I had to ask, because I didn't hear the loud hum of a generator, nor did I see any sign of power being run to the house. My host turned to look at me with his eyes and hissed, "How my homework shouldn't concern you." As he said this, I could see what little blood this guy had rushed to his face. He was angry, and he seemed like he was barely able to contain it. He turned back around and started heading further and faster towards the back of the house. I was about to apologize as I fought to keep up with him, but that's when I caught something with my eye. It was a picture on the wall. One of those old-timey pictures, the ones that you see in people's grandparents' house. I could only take a quick look, but from what I could tell, even in black and white, one of the men in the picture looked exactly like Mr. Vitter. The only difference was the guy in the picture had normal eyes. It couldn't be him. This picture had to be from the 1880s or something. Vitter then stopped, and before I could finish studying the picture, He pointed towards an open doorway to our right. He then said, "This is where the last TV is, and it's exactly like the first one. Do you need to stare at it for some time, or will the information I have given you be enough?" As he asked me, I could feel sarcasm and frustration pouring out of him. What the fuck is this guy's problem? I thought. Then, out loud with a forced smile, I said, "Just knowing the type of TV and where it's at will be enough for me." The weirdo seemed satisfied with my answer and took me a bit further to a back door, flanked by two more busted out windows. He opened the door and walked through them to the backyard, which was exactly the same as the front. Everything a mess. "This is where the last TV is, and it's exactly like the first one. Do you also need to stare at it, or will the information that I've given you be enough?" "Okay, sir. I know you want the satellite somewhere in the yard, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to find the signal. I'll come knock on the door when I do." He looked at me and said, "I'm gonna stay outside. You seem young, and I generally don't trust young people like you." How the fuck are you supposed to respond to that? I looked over at Mr. Creepy and said, "Alright, it's kinda boring, but feel free to watch." No other way to follow someone telling you he doesn't trust you. Well, who could blame him? I was planning on saying there was no signal, even if there was one, and going home. As I started wandering around the yard, hitting random buttons on my signal finder to further help my goal of pretending to find a signal, I was able to take in more of my customer. His eyes and ugly ass face kept me from looking at what he was wearing. His clothing looked as worn as he did. His long black coat was covered. This guy's just all sorts of fucked up, I thought as I was wandering around the yard. I also noticed something else that was a bit suspect. Every 3 to 5 yards or so, there seemed to be little holes recently covered up. It looked like he was planting a garden, or maybe some trees. I would have asked, but he was obviously not wanting a conversation. After about 10 minutes of drifting around and acting like I was doing something, by the way, his eyes never left me. That's when I decided it was now or never to tell him that I had no signal. "Sir, I hate to say this, but due to the trees in the area, I have no line to your provider satellite. The only option would be to remove some of the trees." I was barely able to continue before the anger flashed in his big dead eyes, and the blood started rushing to his face again. "You're not gonna touch any of my trees. They are precious to me." As he screamed this, he closed the 10-yard gap between us in 3 steps. "And you will give me my shows." He was so close to me by this point that the lifeless holes on his face were mere centimeters away. Okay, this was my final fucking straw with the psycho. But I know I would lose my gig if I blew up one more customer. I took a deep breath and said in my best customer service voice, "Sir, I understand you're upset. I think the best way to fix this situation is to try to get my manager out here." To myself, I thought, fuck Jerry. Let's see how tough he really is when he meets this crazy guy. As I said this, Vitter seemed to settle down and the blood stopped filling in his face. "Very well, but you must know I care very deeply about my forest. Don't harm it in any way," he said, still containing some of his anger. "What needs to be done next?" "Well, I need to go get the proper forms for you to sign that we can go ahead and call Jerry, my manager. And don't worry about the trees. We won't touch them," I said, trying not to smirk. "Is this Jerry as insolent as you and as uncaring about my forest?" he asked. I looked up at him, trying with all my might to not look pissed, and said, only slightly sarcastically I might add, "Not at all. He's a perfect gentleman and he loves trees. I mean, the guy has at least 12 in his backyard. Somehow, to satisfy the tree-loving psycho. So I'm gonna run over to my truck and get the forms. Do you want me to meet you inside?" I asked, hoping he would say no, and that I wouldn't have to go back into that terrifying place. "No, I'll be out here waiting." As he said this, he seemed to root himself on the spot he was standing, like his trees, and remained unmoving. I took this as my sign to get the fuck back to my truck and get Jerry's fat ass out here. Not wanting to go through that house,
I took the long way around the side and back to the safety of my waiting truck. As I passed the side of the house, I saw something that caught my attention. A massive painting was hung on the wall, possibly being the only object not completely destroyed. Well, a mess, but still very creepy. The painting was that of a big tree, but it looked like all the branches ended with a human head, with no eyes and dripping out blood. But the trunk of the tree decided it had to outdo the branches in the most fucked up contest ever. The trunk was shaped like a man, whose legs were firmly rooted into the ground. Its body was straight as an arrow, and its arms held high in the air, turning into the most creepiest branches. But the face of the trunk man took the cake for the challenge. The mouth was locked in a permanent scream, spewing blood that pulled up at the tree's roots. The eyes were wide open, fixed on the branches above as if it was in a trance, with the gore-stained scene going on above its head. What the fuck? I mumbled to myself. If you were smart, Bobby, you would leave. So I decided to ignore the massive evidence that this place was probably not safe and continue on to my truck. As I approached my truck, I couldn't help but notice that it looked lower. Now, before you have to ask, yes, my truck was lifted, and I may or may not be compensating for something. But anyways, as I got closer, I saw that my two front tires had gone flat. I then said out loud to myself, fuck me. I nearly yelled out, but I kept it down so I wouldn't have to deal with this crazy psycho. I walked over to my now useless vehicle and inspected the tires, and when I realized what happened, I cursed myself. Since I was so busy trying to avoid pulling equipment around, I didn't notice I parked directly on top of an upraised tree root. Now I had to not only make Jerry come here, but I'll need him to pick me up some spares. He was most definitely gonna be pissed. I took one more look at the depressing sight, which was my lifted 24-inch custom tires, and opened the front cab. I started fumbling around with my little folder filled with different paperwork until I found the right documents. Thankfully, I had one copy left. The first good news of this fucking day. The shitty part of this no signal process is that you need a customer to verbally confirm with the manager that they want the side issue confirmed. Don't ask me why. Most likely some legal bullshit. I started making my way back to the yard, but this time I took the other side that didn't have the creepy ass painting on it. As I arrived again to the backyard, I couldn't help but notice the absence of Mr. Vitter. Shit, I muttered to myself. I headed towards where he was last standing. Maybe he was taking a leak behind one of his precious trees, and God knows there was no plumbing in that horror show of a house. I made my way towards the end of the yard, carefully avoiding the little mounds, and started scanning the tree line. After about 30 seconds, I started to turn away and make the walk to the front door, hoping that he didn't want me to come inside. But as I was turning, I caught a glimpse of something black billowing about 100 yards away in the woods. I moved a bit closer and further away from the house and could sort of make out the object. It was his jacket. As I took a closer look, I then saw a black boot only a few feet from where I was standing, and another one roughly 30 yards past that. Did this guy just strip down and wander into the woods? Well, this was it. The weirdest fucking day of my life. Now, you may be thinking, why didn't I book it and flag down the first car I saw and get the hell out of here? The answer is, I'm an idiot, and I'm curious by nature. Also, I couldn't just leave a job. It would apparently jeopardize the trust between my small company and the big ones that we contract for. My next step would be to call Jerry and figure out what the hell I need to do. I pulled up my phone and hit Jerry's number. As I waited for the familiar voice to ask, "What the fuck do you want?" the phone cut off. I looked down at my screen and saw the dreaded "call was lost" tag pop in front of my screen. Fuck. I tried again, and this time it wouldn't even ring once. I started wandering around the backyard, hoping there was a stronger signal somewhere. When finally I gave up, it was pointless. It dawned on me that Jerry was with one of our new guys today up near Mountain View, about 100 miles east of where I was, and a good 2-hour drive. On top of that, the cell service may have been even worse out there. Shit, no other manager was in today. Even if I could get service, they wouldn't pick up. My only option was to call the dispatch office for the satellite company. The folks over there have zero sympathy for us not completing a job that was given to us, but having someone at least be aware of my situation may stop me from being canned. I made my way to the front yard and thankfully found a single bar of service. Just in case, I tried Jerry again, but there was nothing. Nada. I started scrolling through my contacts list and found the number I was looking for. It started ringing. Thank God for small miracles. I waited for a moment and I heard the lady sigh. These fucking heartless bastards. I just needed some small assistance, but it was too much of a fucking problem to take a call. I heard it 150 times before. I wanted to say, I barely got this call going, but instead I tried a more diplomatic approach. Ma'am, I apologize. I know this isn't standard, but I can't reach my boss. He's actually out of service. I waited, praying that she would just have some sympathy in her heart. And just like that, I was sitting there in the middle of nowhere, listening to the soft tunes of logins while I was waiting for my dispatcher. The music abruptly stopped, and I heard an equally pleasant, male voice on the other end. This is Jack. I heard you got a problem out there in Little Rock. Thank God this guy wasn't a dick. Hey Jack, I got some weird stuff going on out here. I'm in the Ozarks, deep down in some backwoods stuck with an MIA customer. I said, the job number, here it's 306742. I heard Jack typing away at his keyboard, and a few mouse clicks later he said, okay, Mr. Vitter. Oh yeah, he's totally out of your work area. How'd you even end up out there? Fucking call out, man, I said, realizing that these phone calls may be reviewed and I should ease up on the language. Okay, so you said he's like MIA? Like he's not at home? No, Jack, I went to my truck to grab some some stuff, and I came back and this guy was just gone. The weirdest part though, I saw a trail of his clothes leading out into the forest. Like, his clothes? Yeah man, his clothes. From what I could see, it was his jacket and both of his boots. Even I was starting to think that this was made up. There was no way this guy was gonna believe me. I'm looking through all my notes here and there's not a single SOP explaining what to do if a customer wanders off into the woods. But I am pulling up some satellite images of the area, and I do see a small pond formation a small distance from his house. Maybe he went swimming. As he said this, I could hear that he wanted to laugh. Look man, I know this sounds crazy, but there's a whole bunch of creepy ass stuff going on around here. The guy looks terrifying. The house is all messed up for an almost 70-year-old TV and a ratty ass rocking chair, and not to mention the painting, I replied, hearing my own frustration in my own voice. Painting, Jack said, either moved by everything that I said or trying to avoid a confrontation with a crazy person. I couldn't tell, but he definitely sounded less lighthearted. After he asked this, I gave him a brief description of the picture that I saw, what the guy looked like, and even the whole area itself, and for a fleeting moment, he was silent. I'm not sure how to tell you this, but as long as he isn't a danger to you or under the influence of alcohol, you're gonna need the paperwork signed, Jack stated. But to me that would be crazy. This whole situation sounds crazier than a group of shithouse rats, and I think you should just call it a day. I mean, I wouldn't want to be there, and I'm sure your company will let it slide if you said you felt uncomfortable. I like this guy. He didn't just state the guidelines and hang up. He reacted in a logical manner. And he also said something a non-office robot would say. Never thought I would meet a company man who thinks like an actual person. I would say that solution would cover the rest of my problems, but I got another issue. My 2 front tires are blown, and I only got 1 spare, I said, hearing the defeat in my own voice. Don't worry about it, man. I'll contact the local As Jack was about to offer me my salvation from this mess, I heard the high-pitched scream of a woman coming from out in the forest. The last time I heard a scream like that was some person in Afghanistan. Bobby, you alright? What was that? I could hear Jack, but my senses were dialed up to 10, and I could feel goose flesh forming on my skin. Bobby, did you hear me? What the fuck was that? Jack said again, but this time I answered. Some lady screaming bloody murder towards the same area where that psycho walked to, I whisper, trying to keep myself unnoticeable. Jack, my mind's telling me to run down this driveway and don't look back. But if I leave some woman out here to some horrible fate, I would hate myself for it. Bobby, everything about this place sounds horrifying. But there had to be a neighbor or something. I cut Jack short. Man, you got the images from the satellite. There ain't a single fucking person around except for crazy eyes out there. He had an upstairs. Could have been keeping a chick up there for all we know. And the minute I left, he grabbed her and took her to the woods too. I couldn't finish the sentence. I was already all nerves and thinking of someone getting killed. I think I need to go out there. I couldn't hear Jack on the other end. He was thinking about what I just said. If you're dead set on wandering off into the woods and confronting whatever's out there, go grab your Bluetooth and bring me along for the ride. I'll try to call the local PD on the other line, Jack said. I honestly thought he was going to try to stop me. Alright, Jack, let me just get some stuff from my truck, I responded, thankful I wouldn't be fully alone. I made my way again to my truck and reached under the seat to grab my piece. I put the gun in the front seat and put my Bluetooth in my ear. Jack, can you hear me? I asked. Those Bluetooth pieces were not the best, and I didn't want to lose my only companion. Yeah, I got you. Are you sure you want to do this? Some poor lady might be getting hurt out there. It's my civic fucking duty, I said, trying my best not to reveal how terrified I was. I grabbed the magazine from the toolbox and started pushing .40 caliber rounds into it. I slammed that bad boy into the pistol and pulled the slide back with a click. You have a gun, Jack said. You bet your sweet ass I do. I'm in Arkansas, and we actually have the right to defend ourselves out here. I'm not judging, just glad you have some protection. I mean, the SOP dictates I have you fired, but the situation seems to call for a gun. Thanks, Jack. A smile formed on my face as a question came to my mind. Hey, Jack. Yeah? Are you in a cubicle right now? I asked, thinking of the irony of a guy wrapped up in his pre-death coffin, listening to me embark on some adventure, or quite possibly, my death. Is that really what you're gonna ask me? Not like, hey Jack, can you call the cops? Or, hey Jack, can you convince me not to walk into the scary woods towards a screaming person? Or, why are you condoning this, Jack? He said, sounding a bit exasperated. Let me answer the last. I spent 8 years in the army, and my old lady wanted me to take a desk job when we had a kid. Now I'm stuck rotting away in a desk, hoping for just a taste of something interesting. I fell for the guy. I mean, I'd rather be in a temperature-controlled office building, not even worry about monsters or whatever the fuck was out there. But still, I would much rather die than have to make small talk with a bunch of office drones every day. So I guess I was on the fence about who was in the worst situation. Oh, and no, I'm actually in management. I just took over for one of my guys who was sick. So I'm not in a cubicle, you prick. I'm in my own office. I have a window, Jack said. I couldn't help but laugh a little bit. It looks like this guy got screwed by a call out too. The walk from my truck to the edge of the forest was less than a football field, but every step felt like a mile. I could feel my heart beating in my throat and my stomach was turning to knots. The sweat on my forehead started to drip into my eyes as I made my way towards the tree line. I decided that maybe talking while I still could would help some of the fear that was building up. I wiped the sweat away from my eyes as I said the first thing that came to my mind. Hey Jack, so what you do in the army? I heard a sigh on the other end of the line, and then, after OCS, I went straight to job training in civil affairs, then airborne, then aerosol, and lastly ranger school. After 4 years I made captain, went to PSYOPs and transferred over to 1st Special Forces Command. Another strange question to ask at a time like this, Bobby. The first part sounded rehearsed. He was probably used to being asked. Just trying to build up some courage here. In PSYOPs, huh? Passing out flyers or doing some shady shit? I asked, hoping I didn't sound too judgmental. He then stated, shady shit. All my experiences with anyone, even support personnel, in special forces was generally negative. They were always trying to be mysterious and act like whatever they did was secretive. In reality, there was most likely a 23-year-old NSA intern with a pimple face and thick rimmed glasses that had more security clearance than these super soldiers. But I like Jack, and I know PsyOps guys probably do some weird shit, besides yelling at Taliban on a loudspeaker, so I was gonna give him the benefit of a doubt. But I definitely passed out my fair share of flyers on my first tour with PsyOps. You seem to know a thing or two about the military. Did you serve? Yeah man, the Marines, I said. I heard another sigh, and Jack stated, well, if you survive, I'll buy you dinner. I let out a laugh. Some of the fear did die down, but I had just reached the edge of the forest, and the humor that I felt moments ago disappeared, and was replaced by that stomach-knotting fear. Alright Jack, I just made it to the... Again, another ear-piercing scream came from further into the woods, but unlike the last, this one didn't finish. It seemed to be cut off at the last second. It was go time, and I started running full tilt into the unknown. Bobby, quit running. Whatever is out there is gonna hear you coming. And besides, whoever was screaming doesn't sound like they made it. Jack whispered in my ear. See, that's the difference between a guy like me and a guy like Jack. I think differently than short term. Jack, obviously a strategy thinker, decided that there was no point risking me or the chance to stop whatever was out there for someone who was most likely dead. I don't hear you slowing down, Bobby. Yeah, that's because I'm a crayon-eating Marine and I want to kick some... Another scream. I heeded Jack's advice and slowed my sprint to a walk. I got down and started low-crawling to where I thought the screams came from. As I got closer, I could feel the roots and sticks making small cuts on my stomach. It was almost like this whole forest floor had turned against me. But the pain subsided when I smelled something familiar. Rusted copper. Blood. I saw a big tree in my path and could make out a clearing beyond its massive base. I inched behind the tree and took a quick glance into the clearing, and I felt a whole bunch of bile reach the back of my throat. Mr. Vitter had his back to me as he was lifting up an axe and bringing it down on the body of a dead woman. He kept bringing the axe down over and over again on this lady, blood misting everywhere. About 3 feet away from her body, it looked as if her stomach was torn out and all of her insides were spilled onto the ground. It was a huge mess of kidneys and other organs, all leaking blood and other fluids. The smell of the blood, half-digested food, and everything else filled the air. It was so strong I felt as if I could almost taste it. Jack, I whispered as quietly as I could into the Bluetooth. This guy disemboweled the chick and is chopping her to pieces. Jack didn't respond for what felt like 10 years, until I heard a quiet munching. Sorry, didn't catch that, got bored waiting on grabbed a snack. Snickers really do help hunger pains, you know? Jack, fuck. I'm out here watching some woman get butchered by a psychopath, and you're eating a damn Snickers. Trying to keep my hardest to keep the psychopath unaware of my presence. Sorry, Bobby. You weren't saying much and I needed a snack. You're still alive, so nothing too crazy happened, Jack stated, avoiding the topic of this whole show in front of me. He then continued, also, I think I'm onto something. I did some research while you were fucking around in the woods, and I think I may know what you're dealing with, but you ain't gonna like it, brother. I was getting impatient and trying not to retaste my daily egg McMuffin, so I said as quietly as I could while expressing being annoyed. Just tell me. I doubt I can be more creeped out than what I already am. Well, between the tree, the mountains, and Mr. Tall, Dark, and Terrifying, I think you're dealing with the evil Danish god of the forest, Jack said, without any sort of humor. What the fuck are you talking about? I asked, and possibly a bit too loud, because the psychopath suddenly stopped hacking away. Oh shit, this is it. This is how I fucking die, I thought. But the footsteps and sudden death never came, and the hacking resumed. Jack then spoke up. That was a close one. So anywho, I'll explain what I found. I went into some weird Google search engine about cults. But basically you type in a description of a monster, or whatever shit you're dealing with, and it tells you exactly what it is. And I'm pretty positive from what you told me, that you're dealing with a Danish forest god who happens to be an evil prick, like super evil. He requires pieces of 1,000 bodies to build his army of humanoid tree monsters. So for example, if you were to dig up those little mounds you saw, you would be finding fingers, toes, ears, and other human parts used as the seeds to grow his forest friends. As Jack was speaking, I poked at a mound near my foot. As I did, the loose pile of dirt revealed a piece of a human ear, or tongue, or something. I don't fucking know. I'm not a doctor. Jack continued. Next up is what he looks like. See, his body isn't a tree, but it's a tree with a face, screaming his commands and looking to the heavens. And yeah, there's severed heads on the tips of its branches that spout blood to help his tree babies grow. Does any of this sound familiar? Jack stated, sounding almost amused. I whisper out loud. So Vader is some sort of nut serial killer trying to complete his masterpiece of a god he worships? After asking, I took another peek beyond the tree and saw him bend over and pick up the lady's head. He then walked over to the other side of the clearing and pulled out a massive ladder while balancing the blood-soaked head under his arm. Every time I looked out from my little cover, it seemed as if there was more and more blood. I would say it was just from that chick's cut open body, but it seemed as if the whole clearing was covered in fresh, undisturbed pools of blood. And that's when I realized that I had hidden behind the wrong fucking tree. I looked up and saw the backs of hundreds of severed heads. If I didn't see that painting, I would have thought that they looked like coconuts, but I knew better. And to make sure that what I was seeing was real, a huge glob of blood spewed out of one of the heads and landed in the clearing. So here I was in the middle of the Ozarks, leaning against some crazy fucking forgotten god with a psycho no more than 15 feet away from me, playing around with somebody's head. This is within the top 5 of the worst situations I've ever been in. Jack then spoke up on the headset. Hey, so here's something else in case your day wasn't already ruined. Apparently, Bearstook, that's the god, has a sidekick that he grants immortality for their service. The servant is described as being of great height, little girth, and eyes as black as coal. Does that describe Mr. Vitter? I then took a glimpse into the clearing, and Mr. Vitter was failing at his balancing act and trying with great intensity to hold on to the ladder and to the head. I took his moment of distraction and slowly made my way back towards where I came from to get to a safer point. And Jack, I made it back about 20 yards. Can you do me a favor and call the police? I don't think I can do much for that lady, I whisper, still trying to keep quiet. Yeah, let me just ruin your day a little bit more. I have tried about 5 times. Each time I try reaching the town that you're in, the call goes dead. I tried calling the police out here to see if they could do anything. They laughed and told me that they can't do much for somebody in the middle of the Ozarks. I think you may be on your own. Well, except for me, buddy. If it's any consolation and you get killed by a crazy devil worshipper or his pet tree god, I will avenge you. Okay, Jack was either the most calm dude on the planet, or he was truly enjoying all of this. So what the hell should I do, Jack? And why the fuck are you so calm? Jack took a deep breath and spoke calmly, put 2 rounds in his chest and 1 in his head. I highly doubt that this guy, or that tree of his, are actually anything supernatural. Just a nutjob who's obsessed with Danish folklore. And to answer your question, I spent a large amount of my life fighting some of the most violent, despicable terrorists on the planet. Some lady getting her guts spilled out, and a skinny weirdo serial killer cutting people's heads off isn't too far from the shit that I seen. Damn, this dude is tough, I thought. Probably the best dispatcher I could have had today. I then asked, okay, but what if they are, supernatural? And once again in that cold voice, Jack spoke up. Per the article on these guys, you will need to set aflame the old god Bearstook, and the servant will again be mortal. So set Bearstook on fire before he comes alive, and then shoot Mr. Vitter. Easy peasy. I bet this army man wouldn't be so tough if he was the one facing this thing alone. But he sounds pretty confident. I gotta have some faith, I thought. I closed my eyes and kept my back to my new cover. Are you gonna do this, kid? Just go up there. Tell him to freeze. Put a few rounds in him. And when the cops finally show up, just say that he charged at you. By the way, I should mention, this call isn't being recorded, and you shouldn't mention parts of this conversation happening, Jack said. Okay, I'm ready to put this asshole down and get the hell out of here, I said, hoping I sounded less terrified than I felt. You got this, buddy, Jack said, trying to motivate me. I started going back towards the clearing. As I got closer, I could see Mr. Vader on his ladder, fumbling to place the head on top of a branch. If it wasn't so horrifying to look at, you would think he was a normal guy, just messing around in the backyard, not a psychopath hanging parts of dead bodies. I gathered up what was of my shot nerves and yelled, "Hey, dickbag!" Mr. Vader turned his head towards me as I snuck up behind him. Get down off the ladder, slowly. Once you hit the ground, turn around and put your hands up. I felt and sounded like a testosterone-fueled policeman. It was almost as cool as being a testosterone-fueled Marine. But instead of listening to me, Mr. Vader hopped down off the top of the ladder and turned to face me. With an evil smirk, he said, "Is my TV ready, cable boy?" He laughed at my perplexed look. "What, you think I should fear you and your mortal weapons?" As he was speaking, he started walking towards me with the axe that was resting between us. Lord Bearstook granted me the gift of life as long as I facilitated his rebirth into our world and assisted him in becoming the ruler of the forest once more. He was no less than 5 feet from the axe when I yelled, "I'm warning you, don't take one more step. I will fucking spray your goddamn tree puppet with your fucking brain matter." In my ear, Jack shouted, "Nice line. Where'd you hear that from? A movie?" Ignoring the cycle in my ear canal and keeping focus on the cycle reaching for the axe in front of me, I took a few steps back so to avoid any axe swings if Mr. Vader reached for it. "You're a fool, boy. I've been rebuilding the Garden of Bearstook for over a century. Many mortals have tried to stop me, but their bodies and their glorious lifeblood belong to my Lord, and soon Bearstook's revival will be completed. But you will never bask in the glory of my Lord, for I shall bring down his justice and let his children bathe in your blood." As he said this, he ran towards me, reaching for the axe. I warned him not to move, but he made his choice. I felt the welcome feeling of the gun recoiling in my hand and the vibrations that it sent up my arm. My aim was a bit off, but all 3 rounds found a home. The first 2 ripped into his stomach, filling the already stinking clearing with the smell of rotted meat. The third snapped his head back as it buried its way between those black-ass night eyes, fulfilling my promise of spraying his precious tree with its brain matter and skull fragments. Mr. Vader then crumbled in a heap on the ground, adjacent to the leftover pieces of the girl that he had killed earlier. I then heard a crackling on the Bluetooth. "Is he dead?" Jack was asking. I started walking over to make sure that I was going to face manslaughter charges in my near future. I was just a foot away when Mr. Vader's hand bolted out and grabbed my ankle. Pain then shot up my leg, his grip like a bear trap. I then put 2 more rounds in his skull, which caused his head to once again violently flail backwards, smashing into the ground. But his fucking hand stood strong. I reached down and grabbed the axe and took a powerful downward swing, severing his bony arm and releasing the pressure on my ankle. I'm not sure if it was the adrenaline or the fear, but one thing I finally noticed was that he wasn't bleeding. 5 bullets and a detached hand, but barely any blood, just a small trickle from the axe wound. I swear I saw brain and skull fly out when I popped him in the head. "Jack, he's not fucking bleeding. I put 5 fucking rounds in his asshole and chopped off his hand. Just a few drops," I said desperately. "From what I can read, the servant will drain all his blood to feed the early parts of Bearstook's development. I think this might be the real thing." As Jack spoke the last word, Mr. Vader's eyes turned towards me as the holes in his face healed themselves. He let out a guttural laugh and said, "I have already proclaimed. I've been given this gift of eternal life by the great Lord Bearstook, and there's not a single weapon that can hurt me. Do something and get the fuck out of there." Jack yelled through the headset, and he was right. I picked up the axe before Mr. Vader could make a move and brought it down onto his skull, splitting it almost clean in half.
I saw what was left of his brain matter spilled out onto the forest. He shouldn't be getting up from that anytime soon, I said onto the mic. I cut that fucker's head clean in half. Instead of admiring your morbid handiwork, why don't you get the fuck out of there already? Jack yelled into my ear. He was right, and I started booking it through the woods, hopefully towards my truck and the large can of gasoline I keep in the bed. Even though I was at most 200 yards away from my truck, my swollen ankle kept me from getting there quickly. Mr. Vitter was most likely already healed up and about to feed me to the tree. Lucky for me, I had Jack to help me keep my mind straight as I made my way back to my waiting Ram 1500. When I made it to the yard, I went around the side with the painting and made sure to give Bearstook the bird and said, I'm gonna fucking burn you down and all your little tree babies. And your servant, Mr. Vitter, I'm gonna gut him slow. Just you wait, bitch. Bobby, you talking to a painting? Jack chirped in my ear. You actually may need some therapy when this is all said and done. Way ahead of you. Apparently, I have PTSD, I responded. Don't all of us do? Jack said with a bit of humor in his voice. While we were talking, I made it back to the Ram and started sifting through all my junk looking for my gas can. I found it, I said, and my lucky lighter is in the dash. Jack, I may actually not die today. You should set your standards a bit higher, but let's hold off from celebrating until you ice the tree monster and his sidekick, Jack said. Yes, sir, I responded. Slightly annoyed he wouldn't let me have at least a second to chill, but then I grinned to myself as I pulled out the lighter that I had since I was 18. It was the last birthday gift I got from my pops. Alright, Jack, I'm taking the long walk back. Hopefully I don't run into the psycho. If you do, just put a few bullets in him and keep moving, Jack said. Started my way back towards that god-awful scene in the woods, doing my best to remain quiet and unseen. The pain in my ankle went away, or my mind gave up on trying to tell me to lay off of it for a while, so I was able to move a bit quicker. My ultimate goal was to get back there and find Mr. Vitter still split open like a piñata. I made it about 10 feet out when I saw a familiar, semi-nude man standing in the clearing, as if he was waiting for me. I guess no luck on him still spilling my guts on the dirt. Jack, fuckface is standing again. I'm gonna pop a few more rounds in him. Maybe even hack off one of his feet. Don't waste any time, man. Who knows what time Bearstook is coming back. Put a round in Mr. Vitter's head and set that fucking tree on fire, Jack commanded. He was right. I ran ahead, and before Mr. Vitter could react, I placed another round between that little shit's eyes. He crumpled back to the ground, and just for shits and giggles, I grabbed the axe and swung it right back into his skull. I turned around to face the nightmare tree and try to figure out how to go about burning this monster. Bobby, from what I can tell, all you gotta do is set the trunk on fire. That should take care of it, Jack said from the headset. Also, it says something in the article you should hear. Do not speak to the old god, because he can and will bend you to his purpose. So whatever you do, don't talk to the tree. And that's when I saw this thing's face. It was just like the painting, but more expressive, angrier. I started pouring the gas on the base of the tree trunk, which added another wonderful smell to this already shitty filled clearing. As I poured the last of the gas onto Bearstook, he decided that he was going to speak up.
Hello, Robert. Why do you attack me? Why have you hurt my faithful servant? We mean no harm to you. All we want to do is bless the world with my glory.
I looked at the old god's face while he was talking, but not once did I see his mouth move. It was almost like he was speaking in my mind.
Robert, you have accomplished nothing since leaving your warrior class. I can grant you eternal life, a new woman every day, limitless gold, and power over everybody. Take my root and drink deeply from the life of my blood, and your every desire will be fulfilled.
As he said this, a spigot formed on his trunk, directly in front of my face. Jack, the tree, it's talking, I said. Don't listen, Bobby, Jack yelled from the headset. He doesn't need 2 slaves. Think about it. As Jack was yelling, I felt myself drawn to the spigot-shaped root. Don't become a window licker. For some reason,
Being accused of licking windows pulled me back to reality, and it was almost too late. Mr. Vitter was sneaking up behind me with the same axe that I split his skull with twice. At the last second, I dodged his swing by jumping backwards into Bearstook. As I dodged the attack, I dropped my lighter into a tangle of Bearstook's roots. I was able to lift up my 40 and pull the trigger 4 times, but only 3 rounds came out the barrel. The last one got jammed in the chamber. I watched as one of the bullets struck right where his heart should be, but this time, he didn't go down. He stumbled slightly and moved closer, laughing the whole time. "You fool. Bearstook is close to being completed, and his power has given me great strength. Now be still, and I will end this quick," Mr. Vitter proclaimed. "Okay, alright, do me a favor, and just answer 2 questions, and I won't fight no more," I said in my most defeated voice. Mr. Vitter seemed to ignore my request until,
"Let him speak, my faithful servant,"
Bearstook said.
"His weapon has ceased to be useful, and he can do us no harm. His begging for life will amuse me."
I heard in my ear, "What are you doing?" "Run, he can't be that fast," Jack begged. Ignoring Jack, I got into my knees and discreetly grabbed my lighter while acting like I was injured.
"Look at you, boy, dying on your knees. How pathetic,"
Mr. Vitter mocked.
"Ask away and be done with it."
I looked at him in his dead eyes and asked, "Why would you ever let me distract you?" As I asked him this question, I hit the starter on the lighter and dove ahead as I felt my ass being scorched from the burning gasoline fumes. An unholy scream erupted in my head, causing my ears to ache and my head to spin.
"I will tear you limb from limb. I will come back and take your head as my first..."
Bearstook couldn't finish his sentence because the flames reached his face. I saw as the bark that was his flesh charred and burned. The whole time he was screaming in my head, I was able to shake off the shock and turn my attention to the psycho. Hopefully he was no longer immortal. He just stood there, staring at his master with tears welling up in his eyes.
"Why have you done this? You could have been part of the great Lord Bearstook, but now you have slain him,"
Mr. Vitter cried.
"My last act as his servant will be to avenge him and take the life of..."
Before I let this asshole finish his sentence, I unjammed my Glock and shot him in the stomach, just so I would get the chance to watch him die slowly. I looked down at him, and it seemed the spell, or whatever it was, had begun to wear off, because he looked like he was in pain. His intestines were spilling out, and I finally saw the right amount of blood starting to pool in the dirt. In a weak voice, he said, "My whole life, serving my Lord, ended by a low man." As he spoke, I saw blood trickle out the side of his mouth. I guess a bullet fragment ended up in his lungs. I felt now was the right time to ask my last question. "Before I forget, and before you die, why the fuck did you order satellite TV?" I asked, hoping that I would find out why I was out here in the first place. Mr. Vitter then smiled, a bloody smile, looked me in my eyes, and said softly, I missed the show, the view, that Raven girl, she's my type." I thought my opinion of this pathetic shit couldn't get any lower, but when he said the view was the reason my ass was out here, I emptied the rest of my magazine into his skull, spraying his fucking brains, for the last time, onto the forest floor. "Jack, it's over. The tree is burning up." And Mr. Vitter emptied his insides on the ground. "If it wasn't for you, buddy, I would have never made it. I'm gonna owe you a drink, brother," I said onto the mic. So an ancient god and his undying servant killed by an out-of-shape former Marine turned cable technician. "Who the hell would have thought?" Jack said. "I'm glad you're okay, buddy, but it looks like the local PD finally noticed. They called me on the other line, and the down chief of police gave me a serious tongue lashing, yelling about the crazy nut that was blasting off rounds in the woods. Fuck, I'm about 85% positive I just saved the world, and I'm most likely gonna be arrested for this murder," I complained.
If it makes you feel better, I'll most likely get popped for helping your ass out. So it looks like we'll be going to prison together,
Jack said, with a bit of humor. I grunted in response, as I started to hear the distant sirens of the police. Well, at least I won't have to install cable anymore. I haven't told this story in a long time. It happened to me in October, about 6 years ago. I told 4 or 5 people since then, and nobody believed me. I had a lot of time to think about it since then, and I think I'm finally ready to post my story somewhere. It's about a weekend I spent in the National Forest. I had been planning the trip for weeks. I made sure I had the weekend off work. I didn't make any plans. I started buying supplies a week before I went. I was gonna go camping in the forest near my town. I had been camping before when I was a little kid with my parents, but never as an adult, and never by myself, and never in this forest. So I was pretty excited. Now I'm not stupid. I took all the necessary precautions. I told a few of my friends where I was going, when I was going, and when I would be back. I told them if I go missing to call the cops and all of that. I brought an extra phone battery and enough food and water to last me a fucking week. I even brought along my firearm that my dad gave me when I turned 18. I never shot the damn thing, but I figured it would at least scare off whatever the hell wanted to mess with me. I'm telling you all this so you know that I'm not just some dumb kid who decided that he wanted to take a trip to the forest one day and shit himself because of what he saw. I knew what I was getting into. I was ready, just not for, well, this. So enough backstory, I'll get on with it. I left around 6 in the morning. It's an hour drive from my place, so I was expecting to get there around 7. I ended up getting there at 7:30, but I didn't mind. It was a lovely day, not a cloud in the sky, great weather. So I was pretty satisfied with the time that I got there. I parked my car a ways away from the forest, in a little clearing off the side of the road where I knew I would find it. I gathered all my things, had a little snack, and headed off towards the forest. The next few hours are kind of boring, so I'll skip over them. All you need to know is that I made my way into the forest and set up camp. I cooked myself lunch on the crummy campfire I made around noon. I saw a pair of birds dancing at each other. I even took a few pictures of some deer I saw with my phone. I couldn't get a good shot, but at least it's proof that I was there. However, something seemed off. You see, the forest is normally kinda loud. Not like city loud, but there's this constant background noise that is always going on. Rustling in the bushes, leaves, birds chirping, and animals prancing around. When I first got into the forest, that was all well and good. But the later it got, the sounds just started to go away. It took the better part of the day for me to notice. Birds stopped chirping, the bushes stopped rustling. I stopped seeing animals too. That's actually what made me notice. At around 4 in the afternoon, I realized that I hadn't seen a bird in a while. That actually kinda creeped me out a little bit. But I brushed it off and kept enjoying the stay. I was feeling kinda lonely, with everything being so quiet, so I called up a friend and talked with him till sundown. After that, I realized it was getting late, so I hung up. I ate again and put out the fire. After a final assessment of my surroundings and looking at the night sky, I crawled into my tent to sleep. I kept my gun loaded right next to where I slept, just in case, you know. Sleeping on the cold ground in the middle of a forest isn't that easy if you aren't used to it. And considering I hadn't done it since I was a child, I was having a little trouble. It was around 2 hours after I had laid down that I started hearing something in nature again. Now, if I had heard bushes rustling a few hours earlier, this would have been cause for celebration. But even Bear Grylls himself would have gotten creeped out if this was the only thing that he had heard all night. So I did what any rational human would have done.
and clung to the gun like it was the only thing keeping me from falling off a cliff. There was silence for a few minutes. The only thing I could hear was my own shaky breath. Then, no crunching of leaves or snapping of twigs, just the same. It was getting louder, closer to my tent. I tried to peer through the fabric that separated me from nature, but I couldn't make out a silhouette. I clutched the rifle harder, scared as any person would. I remember being sure that I would be safe though. Even bears are rare to attack camps unprovoked. But that natural human fear that was overbearing, making my mind wander and my hands shake. It stopped, close to my tent, just outside my tent. I could feel its presence near me. It was totally silent. I knew it couldn't be a bear. It would be sniffing the tent right now if it was. I doubted it was a deer. They don't come out at night. Perhaps a wolf? They normally travel in packs. And even if it were a lone wolf, it wouldn't be a threat until I heard growling. But nothing. Just silence. And then, a screech. That's when I knew that this thing wasn't anything I had seen before. Nothing makes that sort of sound. It was like a cross between some sort of bird and a human. Like the shit that you hear in movies that possesses people with their heads on backwards make. That's when I let fear take over, in my bladder and in my hands. I fired the gun in its direction, and oh God, was that a mistake. It screeched again, and it scratched the tent, tearing through the fabric, leaving a massive gash in the side. That was my first look at it, if that's even what you could call it. I barely saw a silhouette through the hole in my tent, but I did see its long arms shredding the side of the tent. It was trying to get to me. I fired the gun again, but I must have missed because it didn't flinch. That's when the flight reflex took over the fight, and I only wanted to do one thing: run. I turned around and fiddled with the opening of the tent, trying to keep my eye on the beast attacking me, but also trying to secure my escape as fast as I could. I did it, and dove out of the tent, breaking into a full sprint. Behind me, I heard the thing still tearing into my tent. I thought that maybe it was mistaking its enemy or prey for the tent and not me, but that relief didn't last long. I wasn't far from the tent when I heard it prancing again. It was faster than me, gaining on me. If I tried to outrun it, I would surely be caught. Just then, in what was my crazy thinking, I stopped and dove into a thick bush near me. I remember that many animals in the forest rely on seeing movement more than anything else, so if I could stay still, then it would not see me, and this decision saved my life. It ran past me, stopping in the same place where I stopped. I didn't notice before I hid, but that spot is just under an opening in the trees. A pillar of light penetrated the darkness, and in the moonlight, I could see this thing. It was pale, and it was made even more pale by the white of the moon, and hairless, thin, like it had not ate in weeks. I want to say it looked humanoid, but comparing that thing to a human is just wrong. Its hunched back protruded out, making it look larger than any human. It stood on all fours in such a way that no human could. Its legs bent in such a fashion that it almost resembled a frog, ready to leap. It circled around, silently searching for me. I thought it was about to give up, but it threw its horrendous back upwards, and its legs straightened, and it stood on two legs, like a human, a deformed, horrific human. And then, it looked right at me. It saw me. I know it saw me. Nothing looks at you like that without seeing you. I could tell you the color of its damn eyes, and I bet you that it could tell you the color of mine. I clutched the gun close to my chest, too scared to use it, too scared to move. I closed my eyes and waiting for it to pounce, and then I opened my eyes and it was gone. I didn't move for the rest of the night. I fell asleep in that bush, clutching my gun, until finally being awoken by the sounds of birds. Birds. Thank God, it's birds. It was already daylight. The next morning, I stood up and the things around me seemed normal. The forest was speaking once again, and there were birds and deer everywhere. I stumbled back to my camp to find my things mostly as I had left them. My tent was unsalvageable, but I took my backpack, had something to eat, and then I left, just like I had planned. The entire trek back, I didn't stop looking around for that thing. I didn't let the gun leave my hands either. It wasn't until I got to the car that I relaxed, calling my friend to tell him I was heading home. I didn't tell him about what happened last night. I was still trying to process it myself. Shit, I don't even think I understand what happened until after the car ride home. And that's where the story ends. 6 years ago. And I haven't gone camping since then. I haven't even seen the thing again, nor have I heard of anyone who's seen it. My life has moved on completely, but I will never forget that thing. I will never forget how it stared at me, and then how it just left. It knew I was there, but it left. I don't know why it did that, and I don't think I'll ever get an answer. In the traditional Navajo way, skinwalkers are seen as witches, but they weren't always seen that way. My late grandmother, who was a medicine woman that practiced the blessings way, told me of the origins of the skinwalker. Being a skinwalker wasn't always seen as a bad thing. In fact, they were seen as people with amazing gifts. They could change into the form of any animal, run a certain distance very quickly, mimic people's voices, and some were known to use magic. During the colonization, skinwalkers were used to relay messages between war camps and spy on the enemy without being detected. Having the skinwalker abilities was a gift. Whenever we lost, the good of the community took a backseat and people began to focus on themselves instead of sharing what you had. People began to look after their own families, claiming property and livestock, and there were people that got the short end of the stick. Jealousy is a terrible thing. People became jealous of one another, wanted more fortunate people to lose what they had. They looked to skinwalkers who had otherworldly powers to do their bidding. Now, being a skinwalker is not a gift. You condemn yourself to a life of unhappiness and anger. In order to become a skinwalker, you must sacrifice someone that you love very much. This shows that you are indeed committed to depravity. The interesting thing is that you could have met a skinwalker and not even know it. They are people like you and me. They have chosen a path in which they will hurt other people. We burn clothing and personal items of deceased relatives, and it is very taboo to keep anything that belongs to the dead. Keeping such items can make a person sick or suffer horrible events in their life. However, skinwalkers surround themselves with death. Skinwalkers have been known to grave rob and search through people's garbage. They use bones and hair from the dead and victims' personal items to create bundles. They place these bundles near a person's home, and bad luck will fall upon the person. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the story that I'm about to tell you is about my older sister. In her younger days, my sister was very much interested in the rodeo scene. My family actually has a pretty impressive legacy when it comes to the sport. My sisters didn't compete, but had plenty of friends and family that would go and watch. My two sisters would travel around the Southwest following the rodeo circuit. The cowboy lifestyle isn't always glamorous. It can be filled with alcohol, drugs, and depression. Unfortunately, this took hold of my sister, and she got in trouble with the law. My sister was looking at jail time, and the family was very concerned about what might happen to her. My mother went to a local medicine man, and they talked about the next steps. They decided to have a ceremony for my oldest sister. A few days passed, and it was time for the ceremony. The medicine man and his wife showed up a little past dusk. They came into our house and we served them the food we had made. Everyone chatted for a little bit, and when we finished eating and cleaned up, it was time to start. Everyone sat down in the living room in a circle. The medicine man sat on the far west side of the room. My oldest sister sat to the left. In the middle of the circle was a large pile of sand that was smoothed out on top. My uncles got hot coals from the fire and placed them on the sand. The medicine man started praying in Navajo and sang blessing songs. This went on into the night. At the height of the ceremony, the medicine man turned to my oldest sister and told her that they would have to go outside and pray in the darkness, and he told her not to look around as he is singing. He told her to keep her eyes on him. The medicine man, my sister, and my uncle went outside. The medicine man turned around and began singing into the darkness. My sister was watching him sing, trying to keep her focus on only him. Then, she heard it. Off in the distance, she heard someone whistle. This made her feel sick to her stomach. Our elders tell us about our culture's taboos, starting at a young age. One of the biggest things that they stress is to never whistle at night. They tell us only the dead whistle at night. So when my sister heard whistling out in the darkness, fear gripped her heart. She was so scared that tears began to well up in her eyes. The whistling got louder and louder, as if whatever it was moving closer and closer. My uncle was outside during the prayer. He admits that he was scared too, but he wanted to be there for my sister. What my uncle saw was even more miraculous. He claims that as the medicine man sang, a bundle came from up above. The eagle feathers that the medicine man was holding opened up like a hand. The bundle gently floated down into the feathers, and the feathers closed around the bundle. The medicine man stopped singing, and the group went back into the house. My sister stumbled in, clearly shaken from the experience. The medicine man could see how my sister was. She then asked him what was whistling. He told her it was a skinwalker, and that he was trying to call the bundle back to it. We gathered around to see what was in the bundle. The medicine man opened up what looked to be a leather pouch. Inside of the pouch was a bone about 1 inch wide and 3 inches long. Upon closer inspection, the bone was hollow, and more items were shoved inside of the bone, held in place with twigs and dirt. He dissected the bone to find hair and pieces of a shirt that belonged to my sister, and a very tiny drawing of a woman behind bars. Whatever was calling out to this bundle had very ill intentions for my sister. Fortunately, after the ceremony, all of my sister's charges were dismissed. I asked my sister what they did with the bundle, and she said that she wasn't really sure. She says that she remembers being very scared when they were outside singing. My sister controls her emotions very well, and so I can't even begin to imagine how scared she must have felt in that moment. So if you ever hear whistling out at night, don't ever acknowledge it. Jasmine, Ariel, David, and I were all lovers of scary stuff, and we were craving a new and thrilling adventure. We had gone on ghost tours. We had visited cemeteries late at night, but we had never really experienced anything truly paranormal or scary. So this time we decided to rent a cabin in the deep woods in the Appalachian Mountains for a week to actually try to experience something creepy, you can say. Something about putting yourself in a situation like that really seems to get your adrenaline going. You know that feeling? That same feeling that makes you want to drive through an isolated back road at night, hoping you don't get a flat tire, but at the same time hoping something does happen so you can get that experience from a scary movie. Or is this just me? Anyways, we couldn't leave my husky dog Lucy behind, so she joined us as well. The cabin that we had rented was completely isolated from everybody. Here, there was no connection to anybody, the absence of the internet, and the reach of Wi-Fi only inside the house made us enjoy everything much more. The cabin itself was really nice and towered with the trees that seemed to stretch into the sky, with its wooden exterior and with a stone chimney rising on one side. Inside, The warm glow of the cabin's lights covered us, casting a small glow into the wooden floors. Old pictures and artwork were all around the walls. The cabin featured expansive, floor-to-ceiling windows and glass sliding doors that opened into the balcony into the backyard. These impressive glass panels were designed to connect between the cabin's interior and the natural beauty of the surrounding forest. During the day, they flooded the living space with natural light, and at night, they transformed the cabin into a cozy place where one could still appreciate the serene beauty of the outdoors while staying safe and comfortable inside. This way, even if you were inside the cabin, it still almost felt like you were outside. Anyways, the first day after a long day of hiking and exploring the trails, we returned to the cabin and I decided to settle down with a bath before enjoying some peaceful time on the balcony. As the sun began to set, I stepped out into the big 2-story balcony with my dog Lucy and iced coffee and my phone to put on some scary stories to enjoy the view, and last, with some weed. Because, let's face it, a vacation isn't complete with a little relaxation, right? The balcony extended from the cabin's rear, making us feel as though we were high above the ground, offering a clear view of the big landscape. There was a staircase on the side of the balcony that would lead down to the bottom, which Lucy quickly descended to go play in the field. The huge balcony was almost like 30 by 30 feet, perfect for gatherings and hangouts at night. Speaking of the landscape, it was incredibly spacious, and you could easily distinguish the property line where the land gave way to dense tall trees. From this point, I could take in the panoramic view from the field where Lucy was, chasing squirrels and enjoying the spacious freedom. It's hard to describe, but it was a breathtaking view, a serene moment. However, my smoky getaway session was cut short. Just as I settled down with my iced coffee and was getting ready to roll some papers, Lucy began barking towards the woods. Her barks echoed through the trees, sending shivers down my spine. I quickly got up to investigate, but I couldn't see Lucy anywhere, nor did the depths of the woods reveal anything. I called and practically yelled for Lucy to return, since at this point I could hear the echoes of her barks. But she continued barking before I eventually saw her come out the woods and run back towards the field, up the stairs, and get behind me almost like something had scared her. But this was weird. Lucy, who almost never showed fear of anything, had me baffled. I glanced back over the balcony, trying to see what might have scared her, but there was nothing there. I decided to head back inside with Lucy. I slid the door open, having her to hurry inside. As I entered, I saw Jasmine, Ariel, and David, who were all watching a scary movie in the living room. Jasmine quickly asked, "Back so soon?" They were aware of my little ritual, if you could call it that. Whatever you like, but this was my way of relaxing and also managing my anxiety. Besides, there was something relaxing about combining a smoke session with some scary stories. Speaking of a ritual, they had put on a movie called The Ritual, which I had already seen. However, I asked if I could join them for a rewatch. I mean, it's not like they were going to say no. Anyways, my dog Lucy quickly went to go lay down on the floor, where everyone was at, and I sat alongside everyone else. I quickly forgot about what had possibly scared Lucy, but I guess it was because there was something about being out in the darkness that seemed to play tricks on my mind. Maybe too many horror movies had left their mark. Regardless, as the night continued, we all eventually fell asleep in the living room. On the second day of our trip, we collectively agreed to try to embrace the solitude and stay in. It was a day dedicated to showing our cooking and grilling skills. As everyone took turns in the kitchen, the smell of sizzling barbecue filled the air as laughing and friendly competition started. We dug out our collection of board games, cards, and puzzles. The purpose was clear. We aimed to disconnect from social media as much as possible, cherishing the simple moments of each other's company and engaging in each other's conversations. To be honest, it turned out to be a challenge, I think the fucks of life and all this shit in today's world makes us forget about true connections and relationships. But this was most especially challenging for Jasmine, battling the temptation to post on her various social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, which is now known as X. She fidgeted with her phone, her fingers itching to scroll through her social media feed. Sitting nearby, I chuckled and said, "Jazz, you've been looking at that phone for hours. You're not missing much out there in the digital world." Jasmine sighed, torn between her phone and the challenge to stay disconnected. "I know, but it's just so difficult. I want to share our cabin adventures with all my followers," she said. I smirked. "I came ready for this. And feel free to steal my idea if you ever take a trip and need to disconnect." So I offered her a solution. "How about we capture these moments the old-fashioned way? With a Polaroid camera, we can create physical memories to look back on. That will be the fun part too, that we actually won't know how the pictures are gonna look." The eyes of Jasmine opened up. "You know what? That sounds kind of fun. Let's do it." And with that, she set her phone aside, embracing the charm of capturing memories in an old traditional way. Once we had wrapped up our day of cooking, games, and quality time, I decided to freshen up with a shower, getting ready for my nightly ritual on the balcony. However, convincing Lucy to join me outdoors with a little encouragement, she finally gave in, and together we ventured into the balcony. The view remained as breathtaking as ever, casting a soothing view, almost a welcoming aroma, over me. Despite the serene setting, a lingering unease still tugged at my senses from the previous day, but I brushed it off and I settled down, placing my container of God's green leafy substance on one side and my iced coffee on the other. With my phone in hand, I went through my collection of downloaded YouTube videos, all of them about scary stories. As I lost myself in the stories, my imagination painted the eerie scenes in my head. Lucy, once again, was playing around in the yard. I could hear her running back and forth, her energetic running drawing my attention. But then I heard that she ran towards the side of the cabin, possibly going to the front. As I immersed myself in the stories on my phone and started to enjoy my nightly ritual, a doubt began at the back of my mind. It was a sensation that I couldn't shake, one that triggered thoughts of a book I had read once, The Gift of Fear. The book talked about countless stories of people who had experienced this creepy feeling, acting in ways they normally wouldn't. According to the author, it's a survival instinct buried deep within our brains, capable of sensing even the smallest hints of danger, often without our rational minds being aware. It's a testament to show how our brain is so smart. So in that moment, I decided to pause my phone, allowing the abrupt silence to engulf the surroundings. The world outside seemed to be quiet. There was no sound from the woods, no nightly critters, nothing, just pure silence. I know you might be thinking that I'm possibly just high, but no, the sensation was different. It wasn't the blissful cloud nine feeling anymore. Something felt off. And it was one of those situations where a minor, small detail could be more scarier than outright horror. I swiftly grabbed my iced coffee and, almost forgetting my precious weed, rushed back inside, leaving behind the quietness of the night. As I opened the door, my friends turned their attention towards me, curiosity on their faces. I must have worn a startled expression because Jasmine was the first to ask, "Hey, are you okay? You look like you seen a ghost." I hesitated for a moment, then replied, "You know that feeling when something just doesn't sit right? Like something's off, even though you can't put your finger on it?" I asked, but they just looked at me, weird. Anyways, that was enough for me and I decided to call it a night. Later that night, I woke up having to use the restroom. As I stumbled towards the living room to get to the bathroom, strange noises on the other side of the glass windows and door caught my attention. My heart raced as I saw a dark silhouette, standing upright on two legs. I felt my heart drop. I had seen too many fucking scary movies to even think of the possibilities of what was out there. I froze. and the dark figure started moving desperately as if trying to come inside. For a second I thought I was dreaming, and so I closed my eyes hoping I would wake up. But when I opened them, the thing was still there. "Fuck this," I said. I ran and reached for the light switch to light up the outside, and that's when I saw Lucy. Holy shit, I couldn't believe I had forgotten all about her. I quickly opened the door to let Lucy back inside, grateful that it was just her this whole time. On the third day, I was ready to leave, to be honest. I don't know what it was, but I just felt like we weren't supposed to be here. And this was proven on this third night. My friend Jasmine decided to join me on the balcony. I didn't bring Lucy outside as she forcefully didn't even want to, so Jas decided to join me. We sat in silence, admiring the beauty of the field that was lit up by the moon before us. It was a good moment, enjoying our iced coffee, and once Jasmine finished hers, she decided to go back inside. As I started pulling out the weed, she looked back and said, "Well, how long are you going to be out here for? It's getting pretty late." I thought about it. Something about smoking weed helped me calm down and forget the way I was feeling. So I shrugged my shoulders and said, "It all depends." I laughed, and she said, "Well, don't stay." She stopped in her words and looked towards the field down. I looked at her and said, "I won't be out here too long." "What is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is what?" I said. She didn't say anything, so I decided to stand up and see what she was looking at. I followed her gaze, and that's when I saw it. A bizarre figure standing in the field. It was a naked woman, her pale body stark against the dark landscape. We couldn't make out her features, but the sight sent a shiver down my spine. Her pale, naked body was moving in a slow, eerie, and disturbing manner towards us, and she was taking steps slowly. The moon was lighting up parts of her face, and I could see her jaw was hanging low, giving her a grotesque and unnatural appearance. Then, almost as if she noticed that we had seen her, she let out a wheezing sound, almost like a whisper escaping her throat. That's when she started to run towards us. Her head was tilted sideways, giving her an even more unsettling look. Her movements were stiff, as if her body was not fully under her control. It was a horrifying sight. As we stared in shock at this woman running towards us, frozen in fear, her appearance became more scary, as her pale naked body contorted in ways that defied all logic. Suddenly, she lost her balance and fell to the ground. I'm not sure who or what we were staring at this point. It was as if we had become paralyzed by fear, as we could only continue to watch her. Then, her movements started to grow more erratic. She began crawling on all fours, her hands and knees scraping against the ground. It was a fucking disturbing sight. Then she suddenly got back up, her hair hanging in tangled locks around her face. As she entered the light of the balcony underneath us, we saw that she had no eyes. Instead, where her eyes should have been, there were just empty black sockets. It was a horrifying sight as she continued to approach us with her head tilted sideways and her slack jaw. But what truly horrified us and snapped us back to retreat inside the cabin was when she fucking started to ascend the stairs that led up to the balcony with distorted movements. What made the sight even more scary was that it appeared as if she was looking up at us, despite her lack of eyes. Her head was still sideways, and her slack jaw remained open. We rushed back inside and found the others in the living room. Jasmine and I screamed at them, telling them that someone was outside looking like something out of The Exorcist. They stared at us in disbelief. Jasmine then said, "We're not fucking around, we both saw it." David and Ariel decided to investigate, and David said, "If you're pulling a prank, both of y'all sleeping outside tonight." We all looked towards the outside balcony, but there was no sign of anyone. David slid the door open, scanned the area, and said, "There's nobody out here." Reluctantly, we all stepped outside, and I said, I'm not fucking kidding. There was someone or something out here. Jasmine chimed in. Yeah, we both saw her. David then remarked, well, I guess she's gone now. Must be some psycho living out here in the woods, huh? Even though they didn't believe us, that's when we all heard it. That same wheezing sound. David immediately said, what the fuck is that? We realized the noise was coming from right beside us, and we looked towards the staircase, which was at the end of the balcony on the side, and that's when I saw a dark silhouette, crouched in the corner. There she fucking is, Jasmine said. Fuck this, I'm out of here, I said as Jasmine quickly opened the door. That's when I saw that this woman started crawling on all fours with an unnatural jerky motion. Her limbs seemed to be dislocated and her body contorted as she moved towards us. David, with panic in his voice, screamed at us to hurry the fuck up, as he was the one behind all of us, and we rushed to get inside the cabin. The wheezing sound from the woman grew louder and even more scary as she closed the distance between us. David, being the last one, slid the door shut and locked the door, looked towards the glass, but she was no longer there. That's when Lucy started barking towards the windows too. Alright, what the fuck was that? David said. Jasmine and Ariel started crying, saying that they no longer wanted to be here. I mean, I agree with them. We decided to call search and rescue as we figured that was the only solution here. They advised us to stay put and not move, and to make sure that everything is locked, including all windows and doors. However, they did tell us it would take about a couple of hours for someone to get there. Those hours took basically all night, because we all ended up together in the living room, huddled together, with kitchen knives in hand, in case we needed to do what we had to do to survive. But the worst part was that wheezing sound, that awful, dreadful sound that she had been making, continued to echo throughout the cabin, with noises that also sounded like her running around the exterior of the cabin. And at one point, it even sounded like she was running on the roof of the cabin. Eventually, the noises stopped when the sun began to rise, and we could see the light coming through the big glass windows that led to the balcony. Then, we heard knocking at the front door. I went to go inspect, and it was a park ranger. We tried explaining everything, but of course, he didn't believe us. He did look around the cabin in every corner, and even went down to the backyard to look, but he didn't see any signs of anything. I know the report that he probably wrote up, that a bunch of assholes decided to get drunk and one of them pulled a prank. But I kid you not, this actually happened. And lesson learned, I will never go to a remote cabin ever again. I figured I would share this with you all, since it seems like everyone here enjoys knowing some paranormal experiences. But I'm not sure what this was. Maybe it was some psycho fuck just wanting to scare people. But who would actually in their right minds be enjoying doing this in the middle of nowhere? On top of that, the way she was moving is impossible for any normal human to move. Anyways, I don't know, but sometimes when I lay down at night in bed, I swear I can hear noises coming from the roof with that same wheezing sound.